Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1. When I moved into this house, the walls looked freshly painted, too freshly. Something felt off. The living room corner seemed thicker than the rest, like someone had layered over something. I chipped at it one night out of curiosity, and underneath the pale green paint there were scratches, deep ones, dozens of them. They weren't random, they formed words, not in full sentences, but phrases. Please stop. It burns. They watch. I stopped scraping. But now I can't unsee the way the paint in that room seems to ripple when I pass, like it's hiding more than just words. The real estate agent had been too eager to close the deal. I remember her fingers drumming against the kitchen counter while she talked about the previous owner's sudden departure. She kept checking her phone, glancing toward that corner where I'd later find the scratches. When I asked about the fresh paint job, she said the owner wanted to leave the place, move-in ready. Her voice caught on those words just slightly, like she was reading from a script she didn't quite believe. I started documenting what I found. First, I photographed the scratches before scraping away more paint. The words multiplied. Help me, can't breathe. Behind the wall, each phrase carved with something sharp, pressed deep enough to gouge the drywall beneath. The handwriting was frantic, desperate. Some letters were incomplete, as if whoever wrote them had been interrupted or had run out of strength. The basement felt different after that discovery. Every creak in the floorboards above made me pause. The furnace kicked on at irregular intervals, and I noticed the vent in the living room corner, the same corner with the scratches, seemed to blow warmer air than the others. I pressed my ear against the wall there. The house was old, probably built in the 70s, and the walls were thick. But behind the drywall, I could hear something that sounded like hollow space. I visited the county records office. The house had changed hands 4 times in the past decade. Each sale happened quickly, well below market value. The previous owner's name was listed as executor of an estate, not the actual resident. When I tried to track down contact information, the phone numbers were disconnected. The forwarding addresses led to post office boxes that had been closed. The neighbor across the street was elderly, had lived there for decades. She invited me in for coffee when I introduced myself. Her kitchen window faced my house directly, and I noticed she kept glancing toward it while we talked. When I mentioned the previous residence, her cup rattled against the saucer. She told me there had been a young woman living there, very quiet, kept to herself. Then she stopped coming outside. The mailbox filled up. Eventually, a moving truck came, but the neighbor never saw anyone supervise the loading. The woman's description haunted me. She said the resident had been thin, nervous, often wearing long sleeves even in summer. Sometimes she'd seen her in the backyard, always alone, sometimes talking to herself, or maybe talking to someone the neighbor couldn't see. The woman had asked me if I'd found anything unusual in the house. Her eyes searched my face when she asked, like she expected me to understand something she couldn't say directly. I went back to the wall. This time I brought a stud finder. The device went crazy over that corner, beeping erratically. Either there was metal behind the drywall or the wall itself was hollow. I pressed my palms against the surface, feeling for temperature differences. The corner was noticeably warmer than the surrounding wall. The paint there had a different texture too, slightly raised, like it had been applied over something that created an uneven surface. Late one night I heard tapping from inside the wall, rhythmic, deliberate. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps, pause. I placed my ear against the drywall and listened. The tapping stopped. I waited, barely breathing. Then it started again, but fainter, like it was coming from deeper inside the wall. I tapped back 3 times. The response was immediate. 3 taps, then silence. I called a contractor the next morning. He arrived with thermal imaging equipment, said he'd help me figure out what was behind the wall. When he ran the device over the corner, his expression changed. The screen showed a clear temperature differential, something warm behind the drywall, roughly human-sized. He asked me about the house's history, about the previous owner. I told him what I knew, which wasn't much. He packed up his equipment and left, saying he'd send me a written report. That was weeks ago. I'm still waiting. The scratches under the paint weren't the only thing I found. There were nail marks along the baseboards, concentrated near the corner. Someone had clawed at the floor, trying to get underneath it. I pried up a section of the hardwood and found more scratches on the subfloor beneath. The wood was stained dark in places, stains that had soaked through multiple layers. I've been researching missing person cases, searching for any reports that might connect to this house. The databases are incomplete and many cases go unreported, but I found something. A woman who'd been reported missing 2 years ago. The description matched what my neighbor had told me. The case was closed after 6 months, listed as a voluntary disappearance. No body was ever found. The house feels different now. The corner where I found the scratches seems to pulse with its own rhythm. The paint there has started to bubble, revealing new patches of the desperate words beneath. I've stopped scraping. Some discoveries are too heavy to bear alone, and I'm beginning to understand that whoever lived here before me might still be trying to tell their story. The real estate agent won't return my calls. The contractor never sent his report. My neighbor has stopped waving when she sees me. Everyone seems to know something I'm only beginning to suspect. This house isn't just hiding scratches under its paint, it's hiding someone who might never have had the chance to leave. I still hear the tapping some nights, always 3 taps, always from the same corner. I've stopped tapping back, because I'm afraid of what might happen if I help them finish what they started trying to say. Crime 2, I barely use the garage, I park outside. But last week a heavy chemical smell hit me when I opened the side door. Bleach, sharp and overbearing, but beneath it was something else, earthy, rotting. I followed the scent to the drain in the floor. It was clean, too clean, scrubbed raw with gouges in the concrete. I pulled up the rug in the corner. The floor had been broken and patched, poorly. Now every time I walk past, I hear a soft creak, like something shifting beneath. And I keep having the same dream. I'm not the one walking into the garage. I'm the one buried under it. The house came with its stories like most old places do. The previous owner had been a quiet man who kept to himself. The neighbors remembered him as polite but distant. When I asked about why he sold, they shrugged. Family reasons, they said, but their eyes wouldn't meet mine when they spoke about him. I started small, asked the mail carrier if he remembered anything unusual. He paused, shifting the weight of his bag. There had been a smell, he said, not always, but sometimes when the wind was right, chemical-like. He'd assumed it was cleaning supplies or maybe pool chemicals, though he'd never seen a pool in the backyard. The real estate agent's files were sparse. Standard inspection reports, nothing flagged. But when I called her office, the receptionist mentioned something interesting. The previous owner had insisted on showing the house himself, never let the agent into the garage during viewings, said it was too cluttered, too embarrassing. I found the inspection report buried in a folder I'd forgotten about. The garage had been marked as inaccessible due to stored materials. The inspector had never actually gone inside. I ran my fingers over the signature at the bottom, a scrawl I couldn't quite make out. Something about it felt rehearsed, practiced. The drain bothered me most. I'd lived in enough places to know what normal wear looked like. This wasn't it. The metal grating was new, but the concrete around it showed signs of repeated scrubbing, deep grooves where something had been dragged across the surface. I knelt down and pressed my ear to the floor. The concrete was hollow in spots like cavities in a tooth. I started keeping a journal, not because I wanted to, but because the details kept slipping away. The smell would be there one day, gone the next. The creaking sounds came and went without pattern. I'd wake up with dirt under my fingernails, though I hadn't been gardening. The neighbor's dog never stopped barking when I was in the garage, a nervous, high-pitched whine that made my skin crawl. When I mentioned it to the neighbor, she looked puzzled. Said the dog had been acting strange ever since the previous owner moved away. Used to be friendly with him, she said, then suddenly wouldn't go near the property line. I found a business card tucked behind the water heater, a landscaping company. The number was disconnected, but the address led me to a small office across town. The woman behind the desk remembered the previous owner. He'd hired them for a single job, digging up the backyard to install a drainage system. But when they'd arrived, he'd changed his mind, paid them anyway in cash, said he'd handle it himself. The city records showed no permits for any drainage work, no electrical work, no plumbing, but there was a record of a large delivery of concrete mix and rebar. Ordered on the same day the landscaping company had been scheduled to arrive. I started having conversations with myself in the garage, not out loud but in my head, asking questions I didn't want to answer. The previous owner had been so careful about everything else. The house was spotless when I bought it, every surface cleaned, every corner organized, but he'd left the garage key on the kitchen counter, like he wanted me to find it. The dreams became more vivid. I'd see myself from above, looking down at the garage floor, but the perspective was wrong, too high, like I was floating or buried. The concrete would crack, revealing dark earth beneath, and I'd hear breathing that wasn't mine. I called the police once, told them about the smell, the patched floor, the dreams. The officer was polite but dismissive. Said I'd need more than suspicions to warrant an investigation. Asked if I'd considered that maybe the previous owner had just been a thorough cleaner. The conversation left me feeling paranoid, like I was the one with something to hide. But I kept digging, not literally, not yet, through records, through conversations, through the small details that add up to a picture nobody wants to see. The previous owner had lost his wife 2 years before selling. Natural causes, the obituary said, but there was no funeral service listed, no burial site, just a brief mention of cremation. I found myself checking the garage multiple times each day. The smell would shift and change, sometimes faint, sometimes overwhelming. I bought an air freshener, but it only made things worse. The artificial scent mixed with whatever was beneath, creating something nauseating and sweet. The patch in the floor wasn't random. It was roughly the size of a person, lengthwise with extra width at what would be the shoulders. I measured it twice, hoping I was wrong. The concrete was a different color, newer, but weathered to look older. Someone had taken time to make it blend in. I started researching the wife's death. Natural causes could mean anything. The death certificate listed heart failure, but that's what they always list when someone dies at home. I found her doctor's office, but they wouldn't release any information. Patient confidentiality, they said, even for the dead. The dreams stopped being dreams. I'd find myself standing in the garage at night, staring at the floor, not remembering how I got there. My hands would be dirty, my clothes damp with sweat. The house would be silent except for that soft creaking sound, like something settling into place. I know what I need to do, I know what I'll find, but I also know that some discoveries change everything. Some truths are too heavy to carry. The previous owner understood this. He'd lived with his secret for years, cleaning and scrubbing and pretending, until the weight of it forced him to leave. The garage door is open now. I can see the patched floor from where I'm sitting. The smell is stronger tonight, earthier. The concrete looks different in the moonlight, darker, more porous, like it's breathing. I hear my own footsteps crossing the threshold, feel the cold concrete through my shoes. My hands are shaking as I kneel beside the drain, running my fingers along the edges where the new concrete meets the old, the boundary between what was and what is. But I wonder if I'm really the one discovering the truth, or if I'm just another layer being added to the story. Another secret keeper, another person who knows too much and can't find a way to carry it. The shovel is already in my hands. Crime 3, I only went up to store old boxes, but when I opened the attic hatch, I found a mattress, dirty, stained, and warm. I didn't put it there. There were food wrappers around it, scraps of clothing. The kind of setup someone desperate might create, but I live alone. I checked the locks. Everything was sealed. I tried to forget about it until I found my bathroom light on. Then the toilet seat up. Then fingerprints on my bedroom mirror. I haven't slept soundly since. Not because I'm scared someone's coming in, because I think they never left. The mattress smelled like fear and desperation. That's the only way I can describe it. A mixture of unwashed fabric, stale food, and something else I couldn't identify, something human. I stood there for what felt like forever, my flashlight beam trembling across the makeshift bed. The food wrappers were from my own kitchen, crackers I'd been missing, bread that had vanished from my pantry. I'd blamed my own forgetfulness. I backed down the ladder and called the police. The officer who came was younger than I expected. He climbed up with his own flashlight, took photos, asked questions I couldn't answer. How long had I lived here? When was the last time I'd been in the attic? Did I have any enemies? The questions felt routine, like he was checking boxes on a form. He suggested I change my locks anyway, just to be safe. But I knew my locks. I'd installed them myself after the divorce. Heavy deadbolts that clicked with authority. Windows that latched from the inside. The kind of security that should have made me feel protected. Instead, I felt exposed, vulnerable in a way I'd never experienced before. The fingerprints on my mirror were small, delicate. I noticed them while brushing my teeth, just smudges at first, then clear impressions when I looked closer. The officer had told me to document everything, so I took pictures with my phone. The flash reflected off the glass, making the prints look ghostly. I wiped them away with shaking hands. I started keeping a journal, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind. Small things kept happening. The coffee maker would be warm when I woke up. Dishes would be clean when I remembered leaving them dirty. My spare key was in a different spot under the garden stone. Subtle changes that could have been my imagination, but weren't. The investigation stalled. The officer stopped returning my calls. I understood why. No forced entry. No stolen items, no evidence of ongoing threat, just a frightened person in a house that felt contaminated by someone else's presence. But I kept digging. I started asking neighbors questions. Had they seen anyone unusual? Did they remember any strange cars? The elderly woman next door mentioned a young person she'd seen in my yard, someone with dark hair who'd been picking up newspapers from my porch. She'd assumed it was a relative. The detail chilled me because I'd been wondering why my newspaper delivery had been so inconsistent. I'd called the company twice to complain about missing papers. I found more evidence in places I hadn't thought to look. The basement had a small window that didn't lock properly. I'd been meaning to fix it for months. The screen was slightly bent, as if someone had pushed it from the outside. The windowsill had dirt on it, and when I examined it closely, I found a single dark hair caught in the frame. That night I heard footsteps above my bedroom, soft, careful steps that paused and started again. I lay in bed with my phone in my hand, ready to call for help, but the sound stopped. When I finally gathered the courage to check, the attic was empty. The mattress was gone. The food wrappers were cleaned up. Even the smell had faded. I called the police again, different officer this time, older, more skeptical. He listened to my story with the patience of someone who'd heard it all before. He suggested I might be dealing with stress. Maybe I should talk to someone. The implication was clear. I was imagining things, creating problems where none existed. But I wasn't imagining the photographs on my phone, the fingerprints I'd documented, the hair I'd collected from the window. I had proof, even if no one wanted to believe it. I started researching similar cases online, stories of people who'd discovered evidence of someone living in their homes without permission. The accounts were eerily similar to mine, the same feelings of violation, the same disbelief from authorities. I hired a private investigator. She was a former police officer who specialized in residential security. She listened to my story without judgment, examined my evidence, and agreed to help. We installed cameras throughout the house, motion sensors, new locks on every door and window. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was taking control. The cameras caught nothing for several nights. Then on a Tuesday, one of them triggered. The footage showed a figure in dark clothing entering through the basement window. The person moved with familiarity as if they knew the house well. They went straight to the kitchen, prepared food, and disappeared upstairs. The image quality was poor, but I could make out enough details to know this wasn't my imagination. The investigator enhanced the video. The intruder was younger than I'd expected, thin, with shoulder-length hair and worn clothing. Someone who looked desperate rather than dangerous. Someone who'd been living in my space not to hurt me, but to survive. The realization should have been comforting, but it wasn't. It was worse somehow. This person had been watching me, learning my routines, taking what they needed while I slept. We set up a plan to confront them. The investigator would wait outside while I stayed in the house, ready to signal if the intruder appeared. I felt like bait, but I needed answers. I needed to understand why my home had been chosen, what had made me a target. The person never came back. After we installed the cameras, after we changed the locks, after we secured every possible entry point, they vanished. The investigator said this was common. Once people realized they'd been discovered, they usually moved on, found another house, another victim. But I couldn't move on. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been watched, studied, lived alongside without my knowledge. Every sound in the house made me tense. Every shadow seemed suspicious. I'd reclaimed my space, but I'd lost my peace of mind. The case was never officially closed because it was never officially opened. The police had no record of a crime. The investigator filed her report and moved on to other clients. I was left with enhanced security and unanswered questions. Who was this person? Where had they come from? What had driven them to live in my attic like a ghost? I still live in the same house. I still check the locks every night. I still look up at the attic hatch sometimes and wonder if I'm really alone. The mattress is gone, but the violation remains. The knowledge that someone was there, breathing the same air, eating my food, watching my life unfold from above. Sometimes I think I see them, a figure in my peripheral vision, a shadow that moves when it shouldn't. The investigator says this is normal. Trauma creates its own ghosts, but I know the difference between imagination and reality. I know what I experienced was real, even if I can't prove it to anyone else. The most disturbing part isn't that someone lived in my house without my knowledge. It's that they might still be out there, choosing another home, another victim, creating the same sense of violation I carry with me, and there's nothing I can do to stop them, nothing I can do to warn whoever comes next. The attic is empty now, clean and secure, but I never go up there anymore. I can't bring myself to climb that ladder again, because part of me wonders if the mattress is really gone or if I'm just not looking hard enough, if the person who lived above me is truly gone or if they're just better at hiding now. I've learned to live with uncertainty, with the knowledge that safety is an illusion, that the spaces we call our own can be invaded in ways we never imagined. The locks on my doors are strong now. The cameras are always watching, but the feeling of being watched myself never completely goes away. Every night I listen to the sounds of my house settling. Every creak could be normal. Every footstep could be my imagination, but I know better now. I know that sometimes the most frightening truth is the one we can't prove to anyone else. The one that lives in the space between what we know and what we can prove. The mattress had a mattress I didn't put there, and somewhere out there, someone is putting another mattress in another attic, creating another victim who won't be believed. The cycle continues, and I'm powerless to stop it. All I can do is listen to the sounds above my head and hope they're just the house settling. Hope that I'm finally, truly alone. Crime 4, I was rearranging my room when I pulled the bed from the wall and saw it, an envelope nailed directly into the drywall. No stamp, no markings, just one word, stay. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a hand-drawn floor plan of my house, every window and door marked with red excess. My bedroom was circled. I called the landlord. He swore he didn't know anything about it. The wall behind the headboard had scratches, like someone had once tried to claw through. I'm sleeping on the couch now, but even there, I feel the walls listening. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. The paper inside was thick, expensive, the kind you'd use for important documents. The red ink had a metallic sheen that caught the light when I tilted it. Someone had spent considerable effort drawing this floor plan. Every detail was precise, the kitchen island, the bathroom layout, even the placement of electrical outlets. They knew this house intimately. I traced my finger along the red marks on the windows. Each X was drawn with deliberate pressure, leaving small indentations in the paper. The bedroom circle was darker than the rest, as if the pen had been pressed harder there. My hands began to shake as I realized what I was looking at. This wasn't just a floor plan, it was a map of vulnerabilities. The landlord's voice had cracked when I called him. He cleared his throat too many times, the way people do when they're buying time to think. He mentioned the previous tenant had left suddenly, something about a family emergency, but his tone suggested there was more he wasn't telling me. When I pressed for details, he became evasive, mumbling about privacy policies and lease agreements. I decided to visit the neighbors. The elderly woman next door answered with the chain still attached, peering through the narrow gap. Her eyes widened when I mentioned the envelope. She whispered that the previous tenant had been a quiet young woman who worked unusual hours. She'd often seen lights on in the house at strange times, shadows moving behind curtains when the woman should have been at work. The man across the street was more forthcoming. He'd noticed someone watching the house before I moved in. A figure would stand beneath the streetlight just outside the circle of illumination. Never close enough to see clearly, but persistent enough to be unsettling. He'd assumed it was the previous tenant's boyfriend, but now he wasn't so sure. I returned to examine the wall more carefully. The scratches were deeper than I'd first noticed. They formed a pattern almost like tally marks. Someone had been counting something. The drywall dust on the floor was old, settled into the carpet fibers. This hadn't happened recently. The nail holding the envelope was rusty, suggesting it had been there for months, perhaps longer. The paper felt different in my hands now. I noticed watermarks when I held it up to the light. Premium stationery, the kind used for wedding invitations or formal correspondence. The red ink had a slight smell to it, metallic and sharp. I wondered if it was actually ink at all. I called the local police department. The desk sergeant listened patiently but explained that no crime had technically been committed. Finding something in your own home, even something unsettling, wasn't grounds for investigation. He suggested I contact the landlord again, maybe change the locks. His tone was dismissive, practiced. This wasn't the first call of this type he'd received. Sleep became impossible. Every creak of the house settling, every whisper of wind through the eaves felt amplified. I found myself checking the windows repeatedly, testing the locks, drawing the curtains tighter. The couch offered no comfort. From there, I could see the entire living room, but also felt exposed to every entrance. I began researching the property's history. Public records showed it had changed hands frequently over the past decade. Previous tenants rarely stayed longer than a year. The landlord had purchased it through a property management company, which had acquired it from an estate sale. The trail of ownership was murky, filled with corporate entities and legal abstractions. The librarian at the local branch helped me search old newspaper archives. We found a brief mention of a missing person case from several years ago. A young woman had vanished from this neighborhood. Her apartment had been searched, but nothing conclusive was found. The case had gone cold, relegated to a file in some detective's cabinet. I compared the newspaper photo to the description my neighbors had given. The physical details matched. The timing aligned with the property's sale history, but correlation wasn't causation. I was building a narrative from fragments, creating connections where none might exist. The envelope began to feel like a weight in my possession. I'd moved it from room to room, unable to decide where to keep it. Throwing it away felt wrong, like destroying evidence, but keeping it felt like an invitation for whatever darkness it represented to remain in my life. I started noticing things that hadn't been there before, or perhaps they had always been there and I was only now paying attention. Footprints in the soft earth beneath my bedroom window, a loose board on the back porch that creaked when stepped on, the smell of cigarettes near the side gate, though I didn't smoke. The scratches on the wall began to resemble something more than random marks. If I squinted, they looked almost like letters or numbers. A code scratched into the drywall by someone desperate to leave a message. But the harder I stared, the more they seemed to shift, rearranging themselves into different patterns. I found myself returning to the wall nightly, running my fingers along the gouges. The drywall was soft there, weakened by whatever had created those marks. Sometimes I thought I could feel warmth radiating from behind it, as if something was moving in the space between the walls. The property management company's records showed the house had been vacant for 3 months before I moved in. But the neighbors' accounts suggested otherwise. Someone had been maintaining the property, keeping up appearances. The lawn had been mowed, the mail collected, who had been caring for a house that was supposedly empty. I began to question my own perceptions. The envelope could have been there when I moved in, hidden behind the bed I'd inherited from the previous tenant. The scratches could have been made by pets or by someone hanging pictures. The red ink might have been ordinary ballpoint pen, appearing metallic only under certain lighting conditions. But doubt crept in during the quiet hours, when the house settled around me, when shadows moved without explanation, when the air grew thick with the presence of something unseen. The envelope wasn't just paper and ink. It was a message, a warning, a piece of evidence in a crime that might still be unfolding. The final entry in my journal reads simply, "The wall is warm tonight." I can't remember writing those words, but they're there in my handwriting, the ink still wet. The envelope sits on my desk, its single word, "Stay," now feeling less like a threat and more like a plea. I'm not sure who needs to stay anymore, or who needs to leave. Crime 5, it rattled when the heat came on. I climbed up, opened the vent, and reached in. My hand touched cold metal, a small steel box, locked with no keyhole. I shook it, something inside thudded against the sides. I haven't opened it, not yet, but strange things started happening after I found it. My front door was wide open one morning. My laptop showed a search history I never typed, and once I swore I heard breathing through the vents, not air, breathing. Like someone was using the ducts for something other than airflow. The box sits on my kitchen counter now, mocking me with its seamless edges. No visible way to open it without destroying whatever's inside. I've been running my fingers along every surface, searching for hidden mechanisms, magnetic latches, anything. The metal feels old, worn smooth by countless hands. When I hold it up to the light, I can see tiny scratches around what should be the opening. Tool marks. Someone tried to break into this box before me, and they failed too. I called my landlord about the open door incident. He seemed confused, claimed he'd never given anyone else keys, but his voice carried an odd hesitation, like he was holding something back. I asked about the previous tenant, the one who lived here before me. He went quiet for a long moment, then said they'd left suddenly, middle of the night, rent unpaid, left most of their belongings behind. The apartment had been empty for months before I moved in. That's when I started paying attention to the other details. The fresh paint in the bedroom that didn't quite match the rest of the walls. The way the hardwood floors had been recently refinished, but only in certain spots. The bathroom tiles that looked newer than everything else. Someone had been covering things up, erasing traces of whatever happened here. I found the first recording device tucked behind my refrigerator. Small, black, still warm, battery nearly dead but functional. I held it in my palm, feeling its weight, wondering how long it had been there. How long someone had been listening to my conversations, my phone calls, my private moments. I searched the entire apartment after that, finding 2 more devices. One in the bedroom closet, another inside the bathroom exhaust fan. The recordings were mostly empty static, but I caught fragments of voices. Not mine, conversations that must have happened before I moved in. A woman's voice strained and frightened, a man's voice calm and controlling. Their words were fragmented, but I could make out pieces. Something about money, something about keeping quiet, something about making problems disappear. I started digging into the building's history, visiting the local records office, talking to neighbors. The elderly woman next door remembered the previous tenant well. A young woman, quiet, kept to herself. She'd seemed nervous in her final weeks, jumping at every sound. The neighbor had seen her talking to a man in the hallway multiple times, well-dressed, professional-looking, but their conversations never looked friendly. The woman always seemed smaller after he left. The box haunted my dreams. I'd wake up hearing that thudding sound, feeling the weight of whatever was trapped inside. I tried everything to open it, lockpicks, magnets, even took it to a locksmith. He examined it carefully, then handed it back with a troubled expression. Said he'd never seen anything like it. The locking mechanism was internal, triggered by something other than a key. Maybe a combination, maybe a specific sequence of movements, maybe something else entirely. I found her journal hidden behind the bathroom mirror. Pages of careful handwriting, entries spanning months. She'd been documenting everything. The man who visited, the pressure he applied, the way he made her feel trapped in her own home. She discovered something about him, something that made her dangerous to know. The final entries were scattered, panicked. She'd hidden something important, something that could expose him. Something that would keep her safe if she ever needed leverage. The last entry was just one line. If something happens to me, everything you need is in the box. I realized then that I wasn't just holding a random object. I was holding evidence, proof of whatever had happened to her. The man in the hallway, the one who'd made her feel so small, he'd been looking for this box. The open door, the laptop searches, the devices in my apartment, he was still looking, still trying to find what she'd hidden. But I also realized something else. The previous tenant hadn't left suddenly. She hadn't packed up and disappeared in the middle of the night. Someone had cleaned out her apartment, made it look like she'd left voluntarily. The fresh paint, the refinished floors, the new tiles, they weren't covering up wear and tear. They were covering up evidence. I hold the box now, feeling its weight in my hands. Whatever's inside could bring justice for someone who might not be able to speak for herself anymore. Or it could make me the next problem that needs to disappear. The man in the hallway, the one who made her feel so trapped, he's still out there, still looking, still watching. The box remains locked and I remain uncertain. Opening it means crossing a line I can't uncross, but leaving it closed means letting someone get away with something unforgivable. I hear footsteps in the hallway sometimes, slow and deliberate. They pause outside my door and I hold my breath until they move on. I still don't know what's inside the box, but I'm starting to suspect that once I find out, everything will change. The question isn't whether I should open it. The question is whether I'm prepared for what I'll find inside and whether I'm brave enough to do something about it. The rattling in the vents continues. Sometimes it sounds like the box calling to me. Sometimes it sounds like breathing. And sometimes, in the quiet moments between, it sounds like someone crying. Crime 6, the leak started small, but I had to remove the cabinet to fix it. When I did, dozens of old Polaroids spilled out, black and white, faded. Each one showed a person sitting at the same kitchen table I eat at now. Some smiled, some cried. One looked straight at the camera, eyes wide in terror. Behind them on the wall was writing, "Too late now." I flipped the last photo over. On the back, in smudged ink, were the words, "Do you see it yet? I keep the photos in a shoebox now." But sometimes, when I sit at that same table, I feel like someone's still watching through the lens. I bought this house because it felt normal. Small suburban neighborhood, decent price, nothing fancy. The previous owner had passed away and her adult children just wanted to sell quickly. Clean transaction, no drama, that's what I thought. The first few months were peaceful. I painted the walls, replaced the carpets, made it mine. The kitchen became my favorite spot. That wooden table, solid oak, came with the house. The sellers said their mother loved it, used it for everything from family dinners to paying bills. I kept it because it felt right, like it belonged there. But the light changed everything. Water damage spreads if you ignore it. The cabinet under the sink had started warping, and when I pulled it away from the wall, I heard something shift behind it. Paper, lots of it. The photos scattered across the floor like confetti from a celebration nobody wanted to attend. 47 pictures, I counted them twice. Each one showed someone different, but the setting was identical. My kitchen, my table, the same light fixture hanging overhead, though it looked newer in the photos. The same window in the background, though the curtains were different. And that wall behind the table, now painted cream, showed traces of something written in what looked like black marker. I held each photo close to the lamp, studying the faces. Young people, older people, men and women. Some wore clothes from decades ago, others looked more recent. The expressions ranged from genuine happiness to forced smiles to something that made my stomach turn. Fear, raw, undisguised fear. The writing on the wall was partially visible in most photos, but only one showed it clearly. Too late now. The letters were uneven, like someone had written them in haste or distress. I turned each photo over, hoping for names or dates. Most were blank, but a few had notations. Phone numbers that were too short for current standards, first names only, and that one haunting message, "Do you see it yet?" Sleep became difficult. I'd lie in bed wondering who these people were, why they were photographed at my table, and what happened to them. During the day, I researched the house's history. Public records showed it had been sold several times over the past 30 years. Each owner had stayed for only a few years before moving on. The real estate agent's files were more revealing. Comments from previous showings mentioned strange atmosphere and unsettling feeling in the kitchen. One potential buyer had written, "House feels watched." Another noted, "Seller seemed nervous, kept looking toward the kitchen." I started visiting the neighbors. Most had been there for years, and their memories painted an interesting picture. The elderly woman who lived here before me had been reclusive, especially toward the end. She'd moved here after her husband died, they said, and had rarely entertained guests. Yet neighbors remembered seeing different cars in the driveway regularly, usually staying for just a few hours. One neighbor, a woman in her 60s, became uncomfortable when I mentioned the previous owner. She looked toward my house, then back at me, and said something that made my blood run cold. She used to take pictures of everyone who came to visit. Said she wanted to remember them all, but people stopped coming after a while. I pressed for more details, but she claimed she'd said too much already. "Some things are better left alone," she whispered, then went back inside. The local police were polite but unhelpful. Missing persons cases from years ago were hard to track, especially without names or specific dates. They took copies of a few photos but warned me not to expect much. "Could be anything," one officer said. "Family gatherings, social events, anything normal." But nothing about this felt normal. I started paying attention to details I'd previously ignored. The kitchen floor had been refinished recently, but underneath the new layer I could see scratches and stains that seemed deliberate. The table itself, when I examined it closely, had small gouges and marks that looked like restraint damage. The cabinet where I'd found the photos was custom built, designed specifically to hide that space behind the sink. Someone had gone to considerable trouble to conceal those pictures, but why keep them at all, and why leave them behind when the house was sold? I researched photography techniques and aging. The black and white film quality suggested the photos were taken over several years, possibly decades. The lighting was consistent, professional almost, like someone had set up a specific arrangement for each shot. This wasn't casual photography. This was deliberate documentation. The breakthrough came when I found a photo I'd initially overlooked. It had been stuck to the back of another, and when I separated them, I recognized the face immediately. It was the woman who'd sold me the house, the previous owner's daughter, but in the photo, she looked terrified, the same expression I'd seen in several other pictures. She was sitting at my table, but she looked much younger, maybe 20 years younger, and on the back of this photo in different handwriting were the words, "She knows now." I called the number I'd used during the house purchase, but it was disconnected. The real estate agent had no forwarding information for the family. It was as if they'd vanished completely after the sale. That's when I started wondering if the previous owner had been documenting something else entirely. Not social visits or family gatherings, but something darker. The fear in those faces wasn't random. It was consistent, directed, like each person had realized something terrible in that moment the camera clicked. I moved the table to different positions in the kitchen, trying to understand the photographer's perspective. From certain angles, sitting at that table, you could see directly into the living room, down the hallway, toward the bedrooms. If someone was sitting there, they'd be vulnerable, exposed, unable to see who might be approaching from behind. The photos began to feel like a catalog, a record of something that happened repeatedly in this house, at this table, over many years. Each person captured at the moment they understood their situation. Some still hopeful, others resigned, a few absolutely terrified. I examined the wall where the writing had been. Under the new paint, I could feel the texture of old marker stains. When I held a light at an angle, I could make out faint impressions of words, not just "too late now," but other phrases. "Remember this, watch carefully, your turn." Sleep became impossible. I'd wake up thinking I heard camera shutters clicking, footsteps in the kitchen, whispers near the table. I installed security cameras, but they showed nothing unusual. Just me moving through the house like a ghost, checking and rechecking the same spaces. The local library had newspaper archives going back decades. I spent hours searching for missing person reports, unsolved disappearances, anything that might connect to the faces in those photos. The results were frustrating. Too many cases, too few details, and no clear connections. But I did find something interesting. The previous owner's obituary mentioned that she'd been a photographer earlier in life. She'd run a small studio downtown, specializing in portraits and family photos. She'd closed the business years ago, but the timing aligned with when she'd moved to this house. I started thinking about the psychology of documentation. Why do people keep records of terrible things, evidence, trophies, or something else entirely? The photos weren't hidden well enough to be truly secret, but they weren't displayed either. They were stored like archived files, waiting to be discovered. The most disturbing realization came when I noticed something I'd missed before. In several photos, you could see a reflection in the window behind the table. Not clear enough to identify, but definitely a human figure. Someone standing behind the camera, watching, waiting. I measured the angles and distances. The photographer had used a tripod, set up in exactly the same position each time. This wasn't spontaneous photography. This was ritual, methodical, planned. The faces in the photos started to haunt me differently. I began to see them not as victims, but as warnings. Each expression seemed to be trying to communicate something specific. The terrified ones were obvious, but the smiling ones were worse. Those smiles looked forced, desperate, like someone performing under duress. I realized I was probably sitting in the same chair where all those people had sat. Eating at the same table, looking at the same view, experiencing the same vulnerability. The house itself had become a trap, and I was just the latest person to fall into it. But here's what terrifies me most. I found a 48th photo yesterday. It was tucked behind the others, newer than the rest. The image quality was different, modern. It showed someone sitting at my table, looking directly at the camera with an expression I recognized immediately. It was me. I don't remember posing for that photo. I don't remember anyone taking it. But there I was, captured in that same vulnerable position, with that same terrified expression I'd seen in all the others. On the back, in handwriting I was starting to recognize, were the words, "Welcome home." I should leave this house. I should pack everything and disappear like the previous owners did, but something keeps me here. Maybe it's the need to understand what happened to all those people. Maybe it's the fear that running away won't actually solve anything. Or maybe it's because I'm starting to realize that the person behind the camera might still be here, still watching, still waiting for the perfect moment to add another photo to the collection. The shoebox sits on my kitchen counter now, 48 photos and counting. Sometimes I catch myself posing unconsciously when I sit at that table, as if I'm expecting the camera to click. As if I'm becoming part of whatever sick ritual this house was designed for. I keep telling myself I'm going to call the police again, show them the new photo, demand a real investigation. But deep down, I know they won't believe me. They'll think I'm losing my mind, that I took the photo myself and forgot about it. Maybe they'd be right. Maybe the house is making me crazy. Maybe I'm becoming exactly what it wants me to become. The leak is fixed now, but I haven't put the cabinet back. That space behind the sink remains open, waiting. Sometimes I think I hear the faint sound of a camera shutter clicking somewhere in the house. Sometimes I feel eyes watching me from corners I can't see. And sometimes when I'm sitting at that table, I wonder if the next person to find these photos will discover 49 instead of 48. If they'll wonder about the terrified expression on my face, about what I understood in that final moment when the camera clicked. The truth is, I think I'm starting to understand what this house really is. Not just a place where terrible things happened, but a place where terrible things continue to happen. A place that chooses its occupants carefully, that waits patiently for the right moment to complete its collection. I should run, I should leave tonight and never look back, but I won't, because I'm starting to realize that I'm not just the latest victim in this house's twisted game. I might be its next photographer. Crime 7, I always thought my walls were solid until I dropped my phone and it bounced against the baseboard. The echo was wrong, hollow. I knocked and heard space behind it. I pried off a panel and found a cavity large enough for a person to crawl through. There were discarded clothes inside, an empty thermos, scratched tally marks along the inner wall. I patched it up. I told myself it was nothing. But now I hear thumping in the walls late at night. Not rodents, not pipes, something deliberate. Something counting. The discovery haunted me for weeks. I couldn't shake the image of those tally marks, dozens of them, carved with what looked like a fingernail or small blade. Someone had been keeping track of something. Days, visits. I started paying attention to sounds I'd previously dismissed as settling wood or thermal expansion. The thumping came in patterns, 3 quick taps, then silence, sometimes 5, always odd numbers. I began documenting them, writing down the sequences and trying to find meaning in the rhythm. My sleep became fractured, broken by these coded messages from within my own walls. I contacted the previous owner through the real estate agent. She was an elderly woman who'd lived in the house for 40 years before moving to assisted living. When I mentioned the hidden cavity, her voice changed. She became guarded, almost whispering. She said her late husband had been a contractor who'd modified the house extensively. She claimed she'd never known about any hidden spaces. But there was something in her tone, a tremor that suggested she was holding back. I pressed her about the tally marks and she hung up. I started researching the house's history. Property records showed several owners over the decades, but nothing unusual. No police reports, no missing persons cases tied to the address. The house appeared clean on paper, but the evidence in my walls told a different story. The clothes I'd found were worn and faded, a child's sweatshirt, adult socks, undergarments that had been washed many times. They smelled of detergent and fear, if fear has a scent. I'd bagged them and stored them in my garage, unsure what to do with evidence of an unknown crime. My neighbor, an older man who lived on the street for decades, mentioned seeing lights in the house during periods when it was supposed to be empty. He'd always assumed it was the real estate agent showing the property, but now he seemed uncertain. His memories were vague, fragmented by years of casual observation. I began staying awake during the thumping sessions, positioning myself near the wall where I'd found the cavity. The sounds were definitely coming from within the walls, but they seemed to move, sometimes near the floor, sometimes higher up, as if someone was crawling through a network of hidden passages. One night I heard breathing, soft, rhythmic exhalations that couldn't be explained by air circulation or plumbing. I pressed my ear against the wall and held my breath. The breathing stopped, then 3 taps very close to where my head was positioned. Someone was listening back. I called the police, but what could I tell them? That I heard breathing in my walls, that I'd found old clothes in a hidden space. They took a report but seemed skeptical. Without evidence of current criminal activity, there was little they could do. The next morning, I noticed something that made my blood freeze. The panel I'd carefully patched over the cavity was slightly ajar. Someone had reopened it from inside. Fresh scratches marked the wood around the opening. I shined a flashlight into the space and saw new tally marks, 5 fresh scratches that hadn't been there before. I decided to install a small camera in the cavity. The footage was mostly dark, but on the 3rd night I captured something that shattered my understanding of the situation. A figure crawled through the space, thin, moving with practiced silence. The image was grainy, but the person seemed to know exactly where they were going. I confronted my neighbor again, showing him the footage. His face went pale. He admitted he'd sometimes heard sounds from the house even when it was empty, but he'd convinced himself it was imagination. He mentioned seeing a figure in the backyard late one night, but it had been too dark to make out details. The elderly previous owner's assisted living facility wouldn't let me visit without family permission. I tried calling again, but the number was disconnected. I drove to the facility and explained my situation to the staff. They were sympathetic but bound by privacy rules. All they could tell me was that she'd passed away 2 weeks earlier. I felt a chill that went deeper than the weather. The timing was too convenient. I discovered the cavity, contacted her, and now she was gone. The thumping in my walls had started shortly after our phone conversation. I began sleeping with my bedroom door locked, a chair wedged under the handle, but the sounds continued. They seemed to follow me through the house. When I was in the kitchen, I heard taps from the kitchen walls. When I moved to the living room, the activity shifted there too. I hired a contractor to examine the walls more thoroughly. He found evidence of extensive modifications, hidden passages connecting different rooms, spaces that shouldn't exist according to the original blueprints. The house had been turned into a maze of secret corridors and hiding places. The contractor found more items, a journal with pages torn out, medications with labels scratched off, and photographs of people I didn't recognize. The photos showed the same individuals over what appeared to be many years, but they were always in the same poses, wearing the same clothes, as if they'd been staged repeatedly. I started recognizing patterns in the thumping. Certain sequences coincided with my daily routines. Someone was tracking my movements, learning my habits. The realization that I was being watched from within my own walls was suffocating. I contacted a private investigator who specialized in missing persons cases. She reviewed the evidence and suggested that the house might have been used as a hiding place for someone avoiding detection, but she couldn't determine if the person was a victim or perpetrator. The investigation revealed that the previous owner's husband had died under unusual circumstances. He'd been found at the bottom of the basement stairs, but the circumstances had never been fully explained. The case was closed as an accidental death, but there had been questions about the timeline. As I pieced together the fragments of this mystery, I realized that the truth is more disturbing than I'd imagined. The tally marks weren't counting days or visits, they were counting people. The breathing in the walls isn't from someone hiding, it's from someone who's been trapped. The house keeps its secrets, and I'm no longer sure if I'm the investigator or the next victim. The walls are thinner than they should be, and something is still counting. Crime ate not much, just a thin brown smear along the rubber seal, but I hadn't been outside in days, and it was thick, swampy mud, nothing like the dust in my neighborhood. I cleaned it, dismissed it, until I found it again. This time on the floor near the pantry, then along the windowsill. I bought a camera, set it up. In the footage, the fridge door opens slightly, just a crack, then closes again. No figure, no face, but the mud appears right after, like something is trying to come in. From somewhere we can't see. The camera became my obsession. I checked the footage every morning, rewinding the same moments over and over. The fridge door, the slight gap, the mud materializing like an accusation. I started leaving notebooks around the house, documenting every trace. The mud always appeared in the same spots, near food, near water, near places where someone might try to sustain themselves. My neighbor upstairs had been acting strange lately. She used to greet me in the hallway, but now she hurried past with her head down. Her footsteps sounded different too, heavier, more deliberate. When I knocked on her door to ask about any disturbances, she answered through the chain lock, her voice muffled and distant. "I haven't seen anything," she said, but her eyes kept darting toward the stairwell behind me. I decided to examine the building's basement storage area. The superintendent had given me access months ago when I first moved in. The concrete walls were damp, and the air smelled of mildew and something else, something organic and foul. In the corner, behind a stack of old furniture, I found a small opening in the wall, just big enough for someone to crawl through. The mud was there too, dried and cracked around the edges of the hole. I took photos with my phone, the flash illuminating scratches on the concrete that looked like fingernails had made them. The scratches were deep, desperate. Someone had been digging their way out or digging their way in. That night I set up multiple cameras throughout my apartment. I positioned them to capture every angle of the kitchen, the living room, the hallway. I needed to know who was entering my space, how they were getting in, and what they wanted. The footage revealed something I wasn't prepared for. At irregular intervals, the fridge door would open, not wide, just enough for a hand to reach inside. The hand was small, pale, with dirt caked under the fingernails. It would grab whatever was available, leftover pasta, fruit, anything that could be eaten without cooking. The hand moved with practiced efficiency, as if it had done this many times before. But the most disturbing part was what happened after. The hand would pause at the edge of the frame, and I could see fingers trembling, not from cold or fear, but from something else. Exhaustion, maybe, or desperation. I started leaving food out intentionally. Bread on the counter, fruit in easy reach. The mud stopped appearing near the fridge, but began showing up by the front door instead. Whoever was taking the food was trying to leave, but something was preventing them from getting out. The breakthrough came when I found a piece of paper wedged behind the radiator in my bedroom. It was torn from a notebook, written in childlike handwriting. "Please don't call them. They think I'm gone, but I'm not. I'm trying to get home, but I can't remember how." The paper was stained with the same mud I'd been finding throughout my apartment. I realized then that I wasn't dealing with a break-in or a stalker. Someone was trapped in the building's hidden spaces, surviving on whatever they could find. The mud was from wherever they were hiding, somewhere damp and underground, connected to my apartment through passages I couldn't see. I tried to communicate by leaving notes of my own. "Are you hurt? Do you need help?" But my notes disappeared without any response. The police were skeptical when I finally called them. They searched the basement, examined the hole I'd found, but concluded it was probably just structural damage. When I showed them the footage, they suggested I might be dealing with a homeless person who had found a way into the building. But homeless people don't disappear into walls. They don't leave children's handwriting behind. They don't move through apartments without leaving any trace except mud and missing food. The case went cold. The officers stopped returning my calls. The building superintendent claimed he'd sealed the opening in the basement, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything. The mud continued to appear, less frequently now, but always in the same pattern. I moved out within a month, but sometimes in my new apartment I find myself checking the fridge door, making sure it's completely closed, listening for sounds that shouldn't be there. The truth is, I never learned who was in those walls, whether they were alive or dead, whether they were trying to escape or trying to return to something they'd lost. The mud was the only evidence they ever existed, and even that could be explained away by skeptics and investigators who needed concrete answers. But I know what I saw, I know what I felt, and I know that somewhere in that building, in spaces between the walls that don't appear on any blueprint, someone is still trying to find their way home, still leaving traces of where they've been, hoping someone will notice. The mud tells a story that no one wants to hear, about people who slip through cracks in our world and survive in places we pretend don't exist. About the desperation of someone who has been forgotten so completely that they've become invisible, even to themselves. I kept the piece of paper. Sometimes I take it out and read it again, wondering if I failed someone who needed help, wondering if I was the only person who knew they were there, and if my leaving condemned them to remain trapped forever. The handwriting was so young, so hopeful. They believed someone would help them get home. I still wonder if they made it. Crime 9, I didn't notice at first. It looked like dust. But when I stepped out of bed, I felt the crunch, a perfect ring of salt around all 4 bedposts. I don't own salt like that, coarse and gray. I cleaned it up. It reappeared the next night, and then again. I asked my neighbor if they'd seen anything strange. They avoided my eyes, said I should move. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed awake, watching the floor. Just before dawn, I saw the salt ripple, as if something invisible was crawling around the circle trying to get in. The salt circles started appearing after I moved into the apartment. The previous tenant had left in a hurry, according to the landlord. Personal items scattered, mail piled up, a coffee mug still half full on the counter. The smell of vanilla candles lingered in every room, but I never found the source. The landlord said the woman had been quiet, kept to herself. No problems, he claimed, but his hands shook when he handed me the keys. I began documenting everything. The salt appeared precisely at the same spot each night, forming an unbroken circle approximately 6 feet in diameter. The grains were uniform in size, too perfect to be accidental. I collected samples, stored them in labeled containers. Under magnification, I noticed something disturbing. Each grain bore tiny scratches, as if they'd been handled repeatedly, rubbed between fingers, or sorted through obsessively. The building's security footage revealed nothing unusual, but the camera angle conveniently missed my bedroom window. I requested access to the previous month's recordings, curious about the former tenant's final days. The landlord claimed the system had malfunctioned, wiping everything clean. Too convenient. I pressed further, and he finally admitted she'd made complaints about someone watching her, following her, leaving things outside her door. I found her forwarding address tucked behind a loose baseboard. The envelope was addressed to someone with the same last name. A sister, perhaps. I drove across town, rehearsing what I'd say. The house sat at the end of a dead-end street, curtains drawn, newspapers yellowing on the porch. She answered the door with hollow eyes, invited me in without questions, as if she'd been expecting me. Her living room was a shrine to paranoia. Photographs covered every surface, all showing the same apartment, my apartment. Pictures of the bedroom, the kitchen, the bathroom. pictures of shadows that didn't belong. She handed me a manila folder without explanation. Inside were police reports, restraining orders, court documents, all filed against someone whose name was redacted from every page. She spoke in whispers, glancing toward the windows. Her sister had been afraid, she said. Someone had been watching her for months, learning her routines, her habits. They'd left gifts, flowers, jewelry, notes written in careful script. When she stopped responding, the gifts became warnings, dead plants, broken jewelry, salt circles that appeared overnight, growing larger each time. The police had dismissed it as harassment by an ex-boyfriend. The sister had denied having any recent relationships. The stalking reports were filed away, marked as low priority. She'd grown desperate, installing multiple locks, security cameras, motion sensors. Nothing worked. The salt circles continued appearing, always in the same spot, always perfect. I asked about the redacted name on the documents. She hesitated, then pulled out a photograph from her purse. It showed a man in his 30s, ordinary-looking, unremarkable, the kind of face you'd forget immediately. She'd hired a private investigator to identify him. The man had no criminal record, no history of violence. He worked in maintenance for the building's management company. The realization hit me like cold water. I'd seen that face before. The maintenance man who'd fixed my bathroom sink last week. The same man who'd had access to every apartment in the building. The same man who'd helped me move my bed to a different wall, claiming the original position blocked the heating vent. I returned home that night with new understanding. The salt circles weren't random harassment. They were a signature, a calling card. The previous tenant had fled because she'd figured out who was watching her, but she hadn't warned anyone. She'd simply run, leaving me to inherit her nightmare. I checked my apartment with fresh eyes. The vanilla candle smell was stronger near the bedroom closet. Behind my hanging clothes, I found a small hole drilled through the wall. It led to the adjacent apartment, which according to the lease records had been vacant for months. The hole was perfectly positioned to watch the bed, to observe sleeping patterns, to know exactly when to enter and leave the salt. The private investigator's report contained one final detail. The maintenance man's employment records showed he'd been working at the building for 3 years, long enough to have keys to every apartment, long enough to study every tenant's schedule, long enough to choose his targets carefully. I confronted the landlord with the evidence. He claimed ignorance, but his reaction betrayed him. The nervous laugh, the way he avoided meeting my eyes, the sudden urgency to end our conversation. He'd known, maybe not the full extent, but he'd known something was wrong. The liability, the potential lawsuits, the bad publicity. It was easier to let tenants leave quietly than investigate. I called the police, filed my own report. The responding officer was polite but skeptical. No crime had been committed in my apartment, he explained. Entering without permission was trespassing, but proving it would be difficult. The salt circles could be explained as a prank teenage mischief. Without direct evidence of the maintenance man's involvement, their hands were tied. The detective assigned to my case was more helpful. She'd seen similar patterns before, she said. Maintenance workers with access, tenants who complained about feeling watched, unexplained incidents that stopped when people moved away. The system was designed to protect property, not people. Unless someone was physically harmed, the law offered limited recourse. I installed my own security system, changed the locks, documented everything. But the salt circles continued appearing, more frequently now as if my investigation had triggered something. Sometimes they appeared in the kitchen, sometimes by the front door. Always perfect, always precise, always overnight. The maintenance man stopped showing up for work. His supervisor claimed he'd quit without notice, left no forwarding address. His apartment was cleaned out, lease terminated. Like the previous tenant, he'd simply vanished. But the salt circles persisted, suggesting either he'd found another way in or someone else had taken over his obsession. I realized I was trapped in the same cycle that had driven away the previous tenant. The police couldn't help without concrete evidence. The landlord wouldn't act without legal pressure. The maintenance company had no responsibility for former employees. Everyone involved had plausible deniability, leaving me alone with my growing paranoia and the nightly reminder that someone was watching. The sister's final words echoed in my mind. She thought it would stop if she left, but some things follow you. I understood now why she'd looked so haunted. The salt circles weren't just harassment, they were a promise. A reminder that privacy was an illusion, that safety was temporary, that someone was always watching. I still find the salt circles around my bed, perfect and precise, appearing overnight like clockwork. I've stopped cleaning them up. They've become part of the routine, like morning coffee or checking the locks. The vanilla candle smell has faded, replaced by something else, something that reminds me of fear and resignation. Sometimes I wonder if the previous tenant is still being watched, if the salt circles appear around her new bed in her new apartment, or if she's found peace somewhere beyond the reach of invisible stalkers and indifferent authorities. But mostly, I wonder if I'll have the courage to run when the time comes, or if I'll become another cautionary tale for the next tenant who finds salt circles around their bed. Story 10. The old house had stood deserted for what felt like an eternity. Whispers among the neighbors echoed tales of the young woman who had vanished, leaving the place shrouded in mystery and sorrow. When the new occupants crossed the threshold, a peculiar chill lingered in the air, as if time itself held its breath. Their journey through the house led them to a bedroom sealed shut from within, a sanctuary frozen in time. Upon breaking the barrier, they were met with a stillness that spoke volumes. The room exhaled a musty sigh, a heavy cloak of neglect draped over every surface. Yet amidst the layers of dust, a peculiar orderliness prevailed. The bed stood immaculately made, the mirror gleamed with an eerie clarity, and atop the desk, a solitary candle had surrendered to the passage of time, its essence pooling like crystalline tears frozen in time. But the true enigma lay upon the desk, a weathered notebook, its pages whispering untold secrets in the language of ink. Detective Morgan delicately traced the words penned by Elise Winters, a young soul lost to the shadows, her essence lingering within the script that danced across the paper. Each stroke of her handwriting told a story of diligence, of a truth untangled from the web of deception that ensnared her. As the detective delved into the chronicles within the notebook, a haunting revelation unfolded. Elise's words bore the weight of a silent plea, a testimony etched in ink on the eve of her disappearance. "I know he's watching me tonight," her final entry confessed, a poignant echo from the past. The narrative painted a portrait of a woman besieged by unseen forces, her world unraveling as she stood on the precipice of truth. The room whispered secrets to those who dared to listen, its walls harboring echoes of a life interrupted. The landlord, a spectral figure in the doorway, bore witness to the unfolding drama with a pallor that bespoke silent complicity. We searched every nook before offering the house for habitation. His murmured words carried the weight of a confession, an admission of ignorance in the face of the unknown. Elise's life unfolded like a tapestry of shadows and light, her diligent pursuit of justice leading her down a treacherous path. Her revelations within the prestigious law firm of Harriman and Associates unveiled a tapestry of deceit, a tangled web of corruption that ensnared the innocent in its clutches. Colleagues spoke of her transformation, of a once steadfast paralegal consumed by the shadows of betrayal. The detective navigated the labyrinth of Elise's world, piecing together fragments of a life shattered by greed and deception. The room bore witness to her final moments, a silent observer in the theater of the unseen. The candle stood sentinel, a silent guardian of truths yet unveiled, its wax a testament to the passage of time and the secrets it held. Forensic experts scoured the room for traces of the past, their efforts uncovering a cryptic trail that led to a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. A key, a flash drive, gateways to a realm of secrets long buried beneath the facade of normalcy. The truth lay within the confines of a safe deposit box, a Pandora's box of revelations waiting to be unleashed. The digital tapestry woven by Elise's hand revealed a dark underbelly of corporate malfeasance, a conspiracy that thrived in the shadows of power and privilege. The recordings whispered of a truth silenced, of lives sacrificed at the altar of greed. The detective's gaze pierced the veil of deception, his resolve unwavering in the face of darkness. As the investigation unraveled the threads of deceit, a sinister figure emerged from the shadows of obscurity. Vincent Harriman, a man of influence and duplicity, stood accused of crimes that transcended mortal boundaries. The evidence painted a portrait of a man consumed by his own hubris, a puppeteer in a macabre play of power and corruption. The courtroom became a stage for justice, a reckoning for the sins of the past. Elise's voice echoed in the chambers, a specter of truth that refused to be silenced. The jury's verdict echoed through the halls, a chorus of condemnation for the man who thought himself above the law. The room where Elise's spirit lingered stood as a testament to her courage, a shrine to the truth she sought to unveil. The echoes of her presence whispered through the walls, a reminder that justice, though delayed, could not be denied. The house stood silent, a sentinel to the secrets buried within its walls, a monument to the woman who dared to defy the darkness. As night fell, a solitary light flickered in the upper window, a beacon of remembrance for the soul that dwelt within. The house stood as a relic of a bygone era, a monument to the courage of one woman who dared to challenge the shadows. And as the moon cast its silver glow upon the abandoned abode, the whispers of the past were carried away on the wings of the wind, leaving behind a legacy of truth and justice that would endure for eternity. Story 11. Arrived in the mail, wrapped in a plain envelope with no return address. A single brass key worn with time. The homeowner didn't recognize it, but something about it felt familiar. When she slid it into every lock she owned, nothing turned. It wasn't hers. But when she placed it on the coffee table, the old grandfather clock in the hallway let out a single, hollow chime despite having been broken for years. Sarah Miller reported the strange occurrence to authorities after finding the mysterious key. What seemed like an odd mishap soon unraveled into one of the most disturbing criminal investigations the quiet suburban neighborhood had ever witnessed. The responding officer initially dismissed her concerns. A key in the mail, perhaps a mistake, he suggested, but Sarah insisted something felt wrong. The officer reluctantly took the key as evidence, mostly to appease her, placing it in a small evidence bag that would later become central to a sprawling investigation. Detective Robert Harmon received the case file during the morning briefing. A veteran investigator with the Special Victims Unit, he had developed an intuition for cases that would evolve beyond their seemingly innocuous beginnings. The brass key sat on his desk, unremarkable yet somehow unsettling. Background checks revealed Sarah had no criminal history. A retired high school English teacher, widowed, with 2 adult children living across the country. Nothing suspicious in her financial records, phone logs, or social media. She appeared to be exactly what she claimed, an innocent recipient of something strange. The forensic team found no fingerprints on the key besides Sarah's. The envelope yielded nothing except a generic postmark from the regional distribution center. No DNA, no trace evidence. The key itself was a standard Schlage, available at any hardware store, though well-worn and at least several years old. The breakthrough came unexpectedly when Detective Harmon decided to run the key's unique bidding pattern through the department database. A cold case from 7 years prior had documented an identical key pattern belonging to a storage unit where investigators had found blood-stained carpet, cutting tools, and photographs of unidentified women. The original investigation had stalled without sufficient evidence to identify a suspect. Harmon pulled the dusty case files. The detective who had worked the case had since retired. The storage unit had been rented under a false identity, paid in cash. Surveillance footage had long been overwritten. The evidence collected had yielded partial DNA samples, but no matches in any criminal database. The photographs recovered from the storage unit showed 5 different women, all appearing unconscious. Only 3 had been identified during the original investigation, all reported missing but never found. Their cases remained open, classified as suspected homicides without bodies. Sarah Miller recognized none of the women when shown the photographs. She grew increasingly anxious as the investigation proceeded, installing new locks and a security system in her home. The question lingered, why had someone sent her this key? Harmon ordered a fresh analysis of the original evidence using newer techniques. The partial DNA sample was expanded and run through genealogical databases. This yielded a distant familial match, a second cousin twice removed from the suspect. Working backward through family trees, investigators narrowed their focus to Harold Jenkins, who had lived 2 streets away from Sarah Miller until moving away approximately 6 years ago. His current whereabouts were unknown. Further investigation revealed Jenkins had been a substitute teacher at the same school where Sarah taught, though they had minimal documented interaction. His employment records showed scattered work history, long unexplained gaps, and frequent relocations. His former residence yielded nothing unusual upon inspection. Neighbors described him as quiet, unremarkable, someone who kept to himself, the common refrain that often follows revelations about predators hiding in plain sight. The big question remained unanswered. Why send the key now? Why to Sarah Miller? Harmon theorized it might be a trophy, a warning, or perhaps a macabre invitation. The search for Jenkins intensified. His driver's license hadn't been renewed, no credit card activity, no tax returns. The digital breadcrumbs people typically leave behind were conspicuously absent, suggesting an intentional effort to remain untraceable. The true horror of the case emerged when authorities investigated a small cabin registered to Jenkins' deceased mother. Beneath the weathered wooden floorboards, investigators discovered a concealed room accessible only through a trapdoor. Inside, meticulously organized shelves held dozens of identical brass keys, each with a name and date engraved on a small attached tag. 5 keys corresponded to the women from the photographs. The remaining keys, 27 in total, presented a horrifying implication of additional victims previously unknown to authorities. Buried behind the cabin, forensic teams recovered human remains. The excavation continued for weeks as investigators unearthed multiple bodies in varying states of decomposition. Sarah received round-the-clock protection as the manhunt for Jenkins expanded nationwide. Behavioral analysts suggested the key represented a twisted invitation, Jenkins selecting Sarah as someone to appreciate his work. The press dubbed him the Keymaster, a name that spread rapidly across national headlines. Fear permeated the community as residents questioned how such horror had existed among them undetected. Detection dogs tracked a scent from the cabin into the surrounding wilderness. Search teams combed dense forest areas. Thermal imaging drones scanned terrain too dangerous for ground teams. The manhunt became one of the largest in regional history. A wildlife photographer hiking in remote woods captured an image of someone matching Jenkins' description. The grainy photograph showed a bearded man with hollow eyes carrying a backpack, heading deeper into the wilderness. Authorities closed in on the area, establishing a perimeter. Tactical teams navigated difficult terrain while psychological profilers predicted Jenkins would not surrender. They anticipated he might have prepared for this contingency with hidden supplies and escape routes. The final confrontation occurred when a patrol officer encountered Jenkins attempting to cross a river. Rather than surrender, Jenkins retreated to higher ground, where he barricaded himself in an abandoned fire observation tower. Negotiators attempted communication for hours without response. When tactical teams finally breached the tower, they found Jenkins dead from a self-inflicted wound. Beside his body lay a journal containing detailed accounts of his crimes, alongside a single brass key identical to the one Sarah had received. Inside a waterproof container, investigators discovered additional evidence, including photographs, maps marking burial locations, and personal effects taken from victims, a methodically preserved record of atrocities spanning nearly a decade. The journal's final entry addressed Sarah directly. "You never noticed me, but I noticed everything about you. The key opens nothing because what I wanted to give you cannot be unlocked with metal, only with recognition. Now everyone will remember my name." The subsequent investigation identified 32 victims in total. Families who had spent years wondering about missing loved ones finally received answers, though the closure came with the unbearable weight of confirmed tragedy. Sarah never returned to her home, unable to reconcile the horror that had brushed so close to her ordinary life. The grandfather clock that had mysteriously chimed was examined and found to contain a small wireless receiver Jenkins had been watching, waiting for the moment she received his gift. The case remains one of the most disturbing examples of predatory behavior hiding beneath a veneer of normalcy. Psychological researchers continue studying Jenkins' writings, seeking insights to identify similar offenders before they act. And somewhere in an evidence locker, a collection of brass keys sits in silent testimony to lives cut short, each key opening nothing, yet unlocking a devastating truth about the darkness that sometimes hides behind unremarkable facades. Story 12. In the stillness of the night, a flicker danced across the baby monitor screen, a fleeting anomaly that caught the mother's attention. Initially brushed off as mere interference, the disturbance escalated as the audio crackled, carrying with it a soft, unsettling whisper that seemed to echo from the shadows. "SHHH, go back to sleep," the voice urged, sending a chill down the mother's spine, her blood turning cold in an instant. With a heart hammering in her chest, she hurried to her son's room, each step a frantic beat against the silence of the house. But upon reaching the nursery, dread gripped her as she found the crib empty, the room untouched. The window remained closed, the door securely locked. The only presence that seemed out of place was a solitary stuffed rabbit, its dark, glassy eyes fixed upon her in eerie stillness. In a frenzy of panic and disbelief, Rebecca's screams pierced the night, tearing through the veil of normalcy and summoning help from concerned neighbors. Emergency services arrived, their presence a stark contrast to the surreal nightmare unfolding within the walls of the home. There on the nursery floor, Rebecca clutched the lifeless rabbit, her world shattered by the inexplicable disappearance of her infant son, Samuel. As the investigation unfolded, the puzzle presented itself as a maze with no clear path. How could a child vanish without a trace, leaving behind no clues except for a haunting voice and a stuffed toy with accusing eyes. Suspicion turned inward, casting shadows on Rebecca as the primary suspect in her own son's disappearance. Her husband Daniel returned to a storm of accusations and doubts, his absence during the fateful night casting a shadow of suspicion upon his own motivations. Strained by the weight of unresolved tensions and the aftermath of Samuel's birth, their fractured marriage added fuel to the growing flames of speculation. Amidst the whispers of a community quick to judge, a glimmer of hope emerged in the form of forensic evidence. Tiny fibers foreign to the household clung to the nursery windowsill, a silent witness to an intruder's clandestine entry. The investigation pivoted towards the discovery of a dark figure captured in the shadows by neighboring security footage, a phantom moving with purpose under the cloak of night. As Daniel's pastime of rock climbing came to light, so did the troubling revelation of a new life insurance policy taken out on Samuel, a grim detail that painted a chilling portrait of greed and betrayal. The threads of deceit unraveled further with the revelation of a second family, a hidden chapter in Daniel's life that cast a long shadow over Rebecca's shattered reality. The baby monitor, once a source of comfort, now stood as a sentinel of deception. Its digital eyes had been tampered with, its signal hijacked to deliver a cruel message from afar. The truth, when unveiled, led investigators to a dark basement where the missing Samuel was found, tended to by a woman with vacant eyes and a haunting connection to the past. Elaine, the enigmatic caretaker, bore the scars of a loss that had festered into obsession, her actions driven by a twisted sense of entitlement and longing. Through a web of deceit and betrayal, the pieces fell into place, revealing a sinister plot orchestrated by Daniel and Elaine, a plan fueled by greed, deception, and a hunger for a life that was never theirs to claim. In the hushed courtroom, the echoes of the past reverberated through the air as the truth was laid bare for all to see. Enhanced audio from the baby monitor carried not just a whispered command, but the damning sound of Daniel's cough, a ghostly echo of his presence on that fateful night, a presence he had vehemently denied. Justice, swift and resolute, found its mark as Daniel and Elaine faced the consequences of their malevolent actions. Rebecca, scarred but resilient, sought solace in a new beginning, a fresh start far from the shadows of the past. Samuel, oblivious to the darkness that once threatened to consume him, grew up under a new light, free from the ghosts that haunted his early days. The baby monitor, silent witness to a tale of deceit and redemption, remained a relic of a past best left undisturbed. Locked away in a box, it held the secrets of a night that changed everything, its glassy eyes a reminder of the truth it had whispered through the darkness, a truth that in the end could not be silenced. Story 13. The quaint costume shop, once bustling with vibrant characters and whimsical attire, now stood solemn and silent as it prepared to close its doors for the final time. Dust danced in the dimming light, settling on forgotten treasures and abandoned dreams. Among the remnants of a bygone era, a lone woman wandered the aisles, her footsteps echoing softly in the empty space. Her eyes alighted upon a mask nestled on a dusty shelf, its delicate features frozen in a hauntingly lifelike expression. Intrigued yet unsettled, she reached out to touch it, feeling a strange pull as if the mask itself whispered of mysteries untold. Approaching the counter, she placed the mask before the cashier, who hesitated at the sight of it. "That's not ours," he muttered, a shadow passing over his features like a fleeting memory. Perplexed, she searched for a tag, but there was none to be found. With a shrug, she decided to take it home, drawn to the enigmatic allure that seemed to emanate from within its painted visage. That night, as the world slumbered in peaceful oblivion, a soft sound stirred the silence. A whisper of fabric shifting, a breath of ancient secrets unfurling. The woman known as Catherine Reed awoke with a start, heart pounding in the darkness. Her gaze darted around the room, searching for the source of the disturbance. And there it was, not on the dresser where she had left it, but on her nightstand, facing her with an eerie intensity that sent shivers down her spine. The mask, silent yet watchful, seemed to beckon her into a realm of shadows and whispers, a realm where the line between reality and nightmare blurred into a tapestry of dread. The next morning, a neighbor ventured into Catherine's home, the morning light casting long shadows across the threshold of the once serene abode. The front door stood ajar, a silent invitation to a scene that would forever haunt the corridors of the mind. There in the stillness of the bedroom, Catherine lay motionless on the floor, her features frozen in a mask of terror that defied all logic. The mask itself was nowhere to be found, as if it had vanished into the ether, leaving behind only questions and unspoken fears. Detective Morgan arrived at the scene, her presence a beacon of logic in a sea of confusion. As forensics meticulously documented the room, the shutter of the camera clicking in a rhythmic dance of shadows and light, she observed with a keen eye that missed no detail. A single drawer left ajar, a water glass with traces of lipstick on the rim, a tableau of ordinary life shattered by the inexplicable demise of a woman who had been swallowed by the darkness that now enveloped her. The medical examiner, a solemn figure in the tapestry of death, knelt beside Catherine's body, his face a mask of professional detachment. Cause of death unclear at first glance, he intoned, his voice a whisper in the chamber of echoes. No signs of physical trauma, no evidence of struggle. He gestured towards her expression, frozen in a silent scream of terror that spoke volumes of a horror unseen. The detective knelt beside him, her breath catching in her throat as she whispered. Something frightened her to her very core, something beyond the realm of reason. Catherine, a woman of quiet passions and hidden depths, had lived a life steeped in the world of art and authenticity. Her colleagues spoke of her with reverence, citing her uncanny ability to discern truth from deception, authenticity from forgery. She had a gift, her boss mused, his voice tinged with sorrow, an eye for the subtle details that others overlooked, a sense of truth that transcended mere perception. The detective pondered the implications of this gift, wondering if it had led Catherine down a path fraught with shadows and unseen perils. The trail of mystery deepened as security footage from the costume shop revealed a cryptic clue. The cashier's confusion, the owner's denial all pointed to a truth that eluded the grasp of reason, slipping through the cracks of certainty like water through cupped hands. A visit to the shop, now a hollow shell of its former self, uncovered whispers of a past shrouded in enigma. The owner, a man haunted by the specters of yesteryear, spoke in hushed tones of a mask that had appeared unbidden during a time of clearance and chaos. It was not of our making, he confessed, his hands trembling with the weight of unspoken truths. It emerged from the shadows, a relic of a collector long gone, a harbinger of darkness that we could not comprehend. And in his eyes the detective glimpsed a glimmer of fear that mirrored her own. A breakthrough, elusive yet tantalizing, emerged from the depths of forensic analysis. Microscopic fibers woven into the tapestry of Catherine's fate spoke of a struggle unseen, a battle fought in the shadows where light feared to tread. She grasped at something, the lab technician revealed, his voice a whisper of revelation. fibers of unknown origin, a blend of human hair and organic matter beyond our ken. It speaks of a connection, a bond forged in the crucible of fear and fate. The investigation unfurled like a dark flower, revealing a tapestry of death and despair that span the annals of time. Each victim, each life claimed by the insatiable hunger of the mask, bore witness to a truth too terrible to be spoken, too horrific to be believed. A retired detective, a keeper of secrets long buried, shared a tale of ancient symbols and forgotten rites. In a dimly lit room, he passed a yellowed file across the table, his hands trembling with the weight of untold truths. Inside each mask, he intoned, his voice a whisper of dread, we found markings of a ritual older than memory, a ritual of soul transference and unspeakable power. The detective listened, her mind a whirlpool of disbelief and dawning horror, as the pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with a grim finality. A journal hidden in the recesses of Catherine's home shed light on the darkness that had enveloped her in her final days. Her words, a testament to a mind on the brink of madness, spoke of a malevolent force that lurked in the shadows, waiting to claim its next victim. The mask moves, she had scrawled in desperate handwriting, her ink a mirror of her unraveling sanity. It watches, it waits, it hungers for the essence of life that dwells within. The symbols, the deaths, all part of a grand design, a cosmic dance of death and rebirth. The detective pieced together the fragments of truth, each shard a revelation of a reality too dark to contemplate. The medical examiner, his face a mask of grim understanding, pronounced the cause of death with a heavy heart, cardiac arrest induced by sheer terror, a fear so profound it stopped the beating heart in its tracks. But the shadows held one final secret, a truth too terrible to be ignored. Surveillance footage, a silent witness to the dance of fate, revealed a figure leaving Catherine's home in the dead of night, a figure wearing a mask that mirrored her own visage with uncanny precision. And yet something was amiss, something that sent a chill down the detective's spine. The gait, the movements all wrong, all distorted as if a puppeteer pulled the strings of fate with cruel intent, a marionette of flesh and bone dancing to a tune of madness and despair. An alert was issued, a call to arms in the shadowed war against an enemy unseen. But the mask, the harbinger of doom, remained elusive, slipping through the cracks of reality like a wraith in the night, leaving behind only whispers of dread and echoes of sorrow. 6 months passed, a span of time marked by silence and uncertainty, until reports surfaced of a peculiar mask appearing in a distant vintage shop, a relic of forgotten nightmares seeking a new host to ensnare. By the time investigators arrived, the mask had vanished once more, leaving behind a trail of questions and unspoken fears. The buyer, a phantom in the tapestry of fate, remained a mystery, a ghostly presence in the annals of the unknown. The case, officially unsolved, stood as a testament to the fragility of reality and the darkness that lurked in the corners of the mind. The detective, haunted by the specter of Catherine's fate, kept her journal close, a reminder of a truth too strange for the light of day. And in the stillness of the night, when shadows danced upon the walls and whispers echoed in the chambers of the heart, she awoke with a start, a sense of unease gripping her soul. She checked the locks, she peered into the darkness, and she tried to banish the lingering fear that clung to her like a shroud of darkness. For somewhere out there in the depths of the unknown, the mask awaited its next victim, its empty eyes hungering for the essence of life that pulsed within. And when it found its prey, when it crept closer in the dead of night, another soul would awaken to the soft sound of movement in the dark, another life poised on the brink of oblivion as the mask claimed its due. The cycle continued, a dance of death and rebirth that spanned the ages, a symphony of terror and despair that played out in the shadows where truth and fiction intertwined in a tapestry of darkness. And so the mask remained, a silent sentinel in the realm of nightmares, waiting to ensnare the unwary and claim the essence of life that dwelled within. Story 14. In the heart of the city stood a quaint coffee shop, a place where time seemed to slow down, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped visitors like a warm embrace. For one man, this coffee shop had been a sanctuary, a place of routine and quiet contemplation. Every day he would occupy the same table, order the same black coffee, and immerse himself in the silence of his own thoughts. The mysterious man was a familiar presence to the barista and regular customers, yet no one knew his name. He existed in a bubble of anonymity, his identity shrouded in enigma. But one fateful day, he broke his routine. He didn't show up at his usual time, leaving behind a sense of unease that lingered in the air like a whisper. When the police were called to investigate his sudden absence, they discovered a wallet left on the table where he always sat. Inside the wallet lay a driver's license with a photo that bore a striking resemblance to the enigmatic man, but to their bewilderment, the fields for name and address were blank, a void where his identity should have been. As Detective Sarah Mercer delved into the case, she found herself ensnared in a web of perplexing mysteries. The security footage from the coffee shop revealed a baffling truth. The man, now known as John Doe, had entered the shop, taken his seat, and then inexplicably vanished into thin air, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. In her pursuit of the truth, Mercer uncovered a series of cryptic clues that only deepened the enigma surrounding John Doe. His belongings, meticulously organized in the wallet, held no real ties to any known identity. A lone business card with a cryptic phone number hinted at a connection to a shadowy world beyond her grasp. The notebook left behind by John Doe was a labyrinth of coded messages and mysterious sketches, hinting at a mind consumed by secrets untold. As Mercer delved deeper into the investigation, she realized that the key to unlocking the mystery lay within the very fabric of reality itself. Through a series of strange occurrences and eerie sightings, Mercer began to piece together the truth behind John Doe's existence. The mirror that hung in the coffee shop, an ancient relic with symbols etched into its frame, held the gateway to a realm where time and identity intertwined. With the help of a former physicist who had crossed paths with John Doe in a different life, Mercer uncovered the truth behind the man who didn't exist. Daniel Weston, a brilliant physicist lost to an experiment gone awry, had found a way to transcend the boundaries of reality, using the coffee shop as a tether between worlds. As Mercer confronted the duality of existence and the fragility of perception, she stood on the precipice of a revelation that would alter her understanding of the world forever. In a moment of clarity, she saw through the shattered mirror the reflection of two versions of the same man, coexisting in a delicate balance of paradox. The final note, penned by Daniel Weston himself, echoed through the empty space where the coffee shop once stood, a haunting reminder of a truth too profound to comprehend. The experiment was complete, the window closed, and the man who defied reality vanished into the unknown, leaving behind a legacy of mystery and wonder. And so, the case of the man who didn't exist remained a riddle without a solution, a story whispered in hushed tones by those who remember the enigmatic figure who once graced the coffee shop with his presence. As Detective Mercer retreated into the shadows, her own reflection rippling like a mirage, the echoes of a world beyond our own lingered in the stillness of the night, beckoning those who dared to seek the truth hidden in the mysteries of existence. Story 15, the mysterious tale of the old box unearthed from the depths of the attic, paints a chilling picture of forgotten secrets and eerie connections. Within its dusty confines lay a collection of faded Polaroids, capturing moments of joy and togetherness from times long past. Yet amidst the familiar scenes of birthdays and family gatherings, one photograph stood out, shrouded in an unsettling mystery. In that final photo, framed by the confines of her own living room, Rebecca discovered a family that was not her own. The figures in the image, frozen in time, exuded an air of blissful ignorance, unaware of the menacing presence lurking in the shadows behind them. A figure, barely discernible in the dim light, stood watchful and silent, casting a pall of unease over the serene scene. As Rebecca delved deeper into the enigmatic photograph, a sense of foreboding crept over her, sending shivers down her spine. The eerie familiarity of the setting, the uncanny resemblance to her own home, only served to heighten the sense of disquiet that now pervaded the once familiar surroundings. With the arrival of Detective Morgan, a somber figure cloaked in experience and determination, the investigation took a grave turn. Piece by piece, the puzzle of the photograph began to unravel, revealing a trail of disappearances and unanswered questions that stretched back through the house's troubled history. The revelation of the Sutherland family, the enigmatic figures captured in the photograph, marked a turning point in the case. Their sudden vanishing, along with the unsettling pattern of families preceding them, hinted at a dark undercurrent of mystery that gripped the very foundations of the house. As the investigation unfolded, the shadowy figure in the hallway emerged as a central enigma, a specter of the past haunting the present with its silent vigil. Enhanced imaging techniques shed light on his ominous presence, his silent gaze a harbinger of the terrors that lay buried beneath the house's facade. The discovery of the hidden crawlspace in the attic, a chamber of secrets concealed behind a veil of deception, unveiled a chilling truth. Within its confines lay a sinister legacy of twisted obsessions and macabre rituals, each family that had dwelt within the house ensnared in a web of darkness spun by a malevolent force. Rebecca's narrow escape from the clutches of the unseen watcher, her retreat to the safety of a hotel under the watchful eye of the authorities, marked the end of one chapter in the haunting saga of the house. Yet, as the phone call in the dead of night and the mechanical whir of a Polaroid camera echoed through the silence, the specter of Samuel Whitfield, the enigmatic architect of the house's horrors, lingered on. The house, now a tomb of memories and whispered secrets, stood as a testament to the darkness that dwelt within its walls. The truth of Samuel Whitfield, his fate entwined with the vanished families and the chilling photographs that bore witness to their final moments, remained a mystery that defied resolution. And so, as the investigation continued, as whispers of the man in the photograph persisted, a new chapter began to unfold. In the shadows of unseen rooms, in the silence of deserted hallways, new families found themselves ensnared in a web of terror spun by a ghostly figure from a past that refused to be forgotten. The watchful eyes of the unseen watcher lingered on, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurked just beyond the threshold of the unknown. Story 16, in the quiet of the night, she ventured into the attic, a place she always avoided. The storm had brought chaos, a leak in the roof that demanded her attention. As she stepped into the dimly lit space, her eyes fell upon a world forgotten, cloaked in layers of dust and tangled cobwebs. Among the shadows, a peculiar sight caught her gaze: a dollhouse, ancient and intricate, its miniature furniture arranged with eerie precision. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the tiny structure, a sense of unease creeping into her mind. Within the miniature rooms were not dolls, but delicate figures, painstakingly carved to resemble her own family. Each tiny replica mirror images of her loved ones, frozen in time. Except for one glaring detail, the figure meant to be her was not seated with the others, but instead stood by the attic door, a silent sentinel. Rebecca Morgan traced her finger along the roof of the dollhouse, feeling the groove where the miniature version of herself stood. A chill danced down her spine, unrelated to the icy draft whispering through the attic. This dollhouse did not belong here. It wasn't from her childhood home, but a rental property her family had only recently occupied. The discovery set off a chain of events that would unravel a mystery beyond comprehension. Rebecca's frantic call to the authorities brought Detective Sarah Harmon to the scene. What initially seemed like a bizarre prank soon transformed into a chilling reality as the truth unfurled. The miniature figures held secrets, not just in their intricate details, but in their purpose. Forensic examination revealed fingerprints unknown to the family, and microscopic cameras concealed in the figures' eyes, all linked to a hidden surveillance system beneath the dollhouse. The investigation took a sinister turn as it uncovered a hidden passageway leading to a makeshift living space beneath the house. It appeared someone had been living there long before the Morgans arrived, observing their every move from the shadows. The previous owner's son, Martin Wells, emerged as the mastermind behind the twisted scheme. Driven by a possessive delusion, he had orchestrated a web of surveillance, turning homes into his personal dioramas. Wells' obsession spiraled out of control, culminating in a disturbing revelation of his elaborate control over unsuspecting families. As the truth came to light, the Morgans found themselves entangled in a nightmare they could never have imagined. Wells' meticulous journals and voyeuristic habits painted a picture of a man consumed by his need for control. In the aftermath, as justice was served and the Morgans sought solace in a new beginning, a lingering sense of unease remained. Rebecca, haunted by the realization of being watched and manipulated, found herself forever changed by the ordeal. The case of the dollhouse voyeur stands as a testament to the hidden depths of human obsession, a cautionary tale of how easily our lives can be twisted into a macabre game by those lurking in the shadows. And as Rebecca gazed into the darkness of her new home, she couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere unseen eyes were still watching, waiting to turn her world upside down once more. Story 17. The fresh occupants believed it to be nothing more than peeling wallpaper, yet as they delicately removed the layers, a tale unfolded beneath. Etched in ink repeatedly was a name. A single name consuming every bit of the wall, penned in a frantic, uneven manner. It was not the name of the previous residents. It was absent from all records. However, upon scouring the name online, they stumbled upon a solitary result, a missing persons case from long ago. And the most chilling part. The woman captured in the photograph bore an uncanny resemblance to the one who had handed them the keys to the house. Michael and Sarah Klein had not planned an immediate renovation of the Victorian-era dwelling. The enchanting old abode had come at an unexpectedly modest price, and the former owner, a reserved, graceful woman with silver-streaked dark locks, had appeared eager to part ways, mentioning her relocation across the country. The couple had been captivated by the home's unique character, its intricate woodwork and lofty ceilings whispering tales of a bygone era. It all commenced with a mere water stain in the master bedroom. Sarah noticed a yellowish blemish spreading across the floral wallpaper. When Michael probed it with his fingers, the paper yielded, unveiling another layer beneath. Intrigued, they began gingerly peeling back the damaged portion. The initial layer exposed outdated paisley designs from what they presumed to be the 1970s. Below that, striped paper harking back to an earlier decade. Yet as they persisted, something unexpected surfaced in the third layer down. Writing, dark ink on faded beige paper. Not random markings, but a name, Alina Winters, repeated endlessly, the handwriting growing increasingly desperate and erratic across the wall. "Who is Alina Winters?" Sarah murmured, her fingers trailing the frenzied script. The revelation unsettled them both. That evening, Michael sat at their kitchen island, laptop aglow, sifting through property records. The house had changed hands numerous times over the years. No trace of Alina Winters appeared in any documentation. The woman who had sold them the house was identified as Margaret Cavendish. Sarah joined him, clutching a coffee mug. Try searching only the name. The online quest yielded scant results until they stumbled upon an archived newspaper article, digitized from microfiche. Alina Winters, age 27, reported missing during the winter months. The monochrome photograph depicted a young woman with dark locks and distinctive eyes mirroring those of Margaret Cavendish, the woman who had passed on the house to them. "This article dates back 30 years, Michael uttered, his voice a mere whisper above the hum of the refrigerator. Margaret would be the right age now, but Sarah swallowed hard. The missing woman never received closure, no body recovered, no suspects identified. Their curiosity morphed into an obsession. Sarah reached out to the previous homeowners, retracing their steps through county records. The renovation efforts came to a standstill as they dedicated their evenings to their impromptu investigation. They discovered that Margaret Cavendish had owned the house for a mere 7 months before selling it to them, an anomaly considering the extensive paperwork and inspections they had undergone. The detective assigned to the cold case had retired years ago. When Michael managed to track him down, the man vividly recalled the case. His voice crackled through the speakerphone as he recounted the investigation. Alina Winters was reported missing by her roommate. No signs of a struggle at her apartment. Her car found abandoned near the highway. The case went cold swiftly, no witnesses, no evidence of foul play, just vanished. Michael hesitated before inquiring, "Did you ever interview a Margaret Cavendish?" Silence lingered on the line. "No, the name doesn't ring a bell. Why?" When they elucidated their discovery and shared photos of both women side by side via email, the retired detective pledged to make inquiries. Within days, a detective from the current force reached out, requesting permission to scrutinize the wall, their abode transformed into an active crime scene. Forensic teams meticulously documented and removed segments of the wallpaper. Analysis unveiled that the ink dated back roughly 30 years. Specialists in handwriting compared the wall inscriptions to samples of Alina's handwriting from ancient journals provided by her kin. The findings proved inconclusive. Meanwhile, Sarah stumbled upon a concealed compartment beneath the bedroom closet's floorboards. Inside lay a driver's license belonging to Alina Winters alongside various identification cards bearing different names, all featuring the same visage with subtle alterations: hair color, glasses, expressions. The ultimate ID, Margaret Cavendish, aligned with their home seller. When authorities attempted to locate Margaret using the forwarding address she had furnished, they unearthed its non-existence. Her phone number had been disconnected. The bank account that had received their payment had been closed. Margaret Cavendish had vanished, much like Alina Winters had decades earlier. Then came the revelation that fundamentally shifted the investigation. DNA analysis of hair strands retrieved from deep within the wall cavity matched Alina Winters. However, fingerprints lifted from the writing itself matched an entirely different profile, one belonging to a psychiatric patient named Rebecca Eldridge, who had been institutionalized shortly after Alina's disappearance. Rebecca Eldridge had been diagnosed with severe dissociative identity disorder. She had eluded the institution multiple times over the years. Her medical records unveiled something bone-chilling. One of her documented alter egos identified herself as Alina. The investigation unearthed that Rebecca had been Alina's childhood companion, fixated on her to the point of imitation. When Alina rebuffed her increasingly unsettling advances, something within Rebecca fractured. She had assumed Alina's identity literally and metaphorically, and crafted an intricate web of personas to sustain the facade. The inscribed name epitomized Rebecca's desperate bid to retain a grasp on reality, to recollect who she truly was beneath the assumed identities. The wall had become both a confession and a prison, a tangible manifestation of her shattered psyche. Sarah and Michael gazed from their front porch as forensic teams excavated specific sections of their backyard, guided by ground-penetrating radar that had detected anomalies beneath the surface. The cold case had abruptly heated up. The remains unearthed from beneath the garden belonged to Alina Winters. Rebecca Eldridge, known to Michael and Sarah as Margaret Cavendish, was eventually apprehended while attempting to cross the border with yet another identity. Confronted with evidence, the persona portraying as Margaret crumbled, yielding to another one who admitted to the heinous act in a fit of jealousy. The names on the wall had served as both a memorial and a manifestation of guilt, inscribed by a fractured mind striving to cling to shreds of truth despite itself. For Alina's family, justice arrived 3 decades too late. For Michael and Sarah, their idyllic abode became infamous, a footnote in true crime lore, forever marked as the residence where the walls themselves confessed to a tragedy. Story 18: The Hidden Doll. In the dusty attic of an old Victorian house, tucked beneath a worn-out blanket, they stumbled upon it, a porcelain doll, its delicate features frozen in time. Its eyes, a piercing shade of blue, seemed to hold secrets of a forgotten past. Sarah and Michael, the young couple who had just moved in, shared a nervous laugh at the sight, dismissing it as just another relic of bygone days. As night descended, a strange unease settled over the house. The air grew heavy, and an eerie silence enveloped the rooms. It was as though the presence of the doll lingered, casting a subtle shadow over their thoughts. And when morning broke, the doll was nowhere to be found in the attic. Instead, it sat ominously at the foot of their bed, its gaze unyielding. Sarah and Michael, drawn to the house's history and charm, had unwittingly become entwined in a tale that transcended time. Detective Rachel Winters, a seasoned investigator, was called to the scene, a scene shrouded in mystery and tragedy. The female victim, posed unnaturally in death, exuded a sense of terror that lingered in the air. Beside her, the male victim lay as if fleeing from an unseen horror. The investigation unfolded, revealing a series of perplexing clues. Neighbors whispered of shadows and laughter emanating from the empty house. Forensic analysis uncovered traces of antique materials, hinting at a connection to the doll. But the most chilling revelation was the absence of any tangible evidence linking an intruder to the crime, a puzzling enigma that confounded even the most seasoned experts. Delving into the house's dark history, Detective Winters unearthed the chilling tale of a doll maker and his tragic daughter. Rumors swirled of arcane rituals and spirits bound to inanimate objects, whisperings of a sinister power lurking within the walls. The doll, a perfect replica of the dollmaker's lost child, seemed to wield a malevolent force that defied rational explanation. As the investigation reached a standstill, a distant relative of the doll maker revealed cryptic family secrets of forbidden practices and the infusion of human essence into lifelike creations. The line between reality and the supernatural blurred, leaving the detective grasping at elusive truths that slipped through her fingers like sand. And then, in a twist of fate, the doll vanished from police custody, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and unsolved mysteries. Detective Winters, haunted by the case, retired from the force, carrying with her a burden of unresolved endings and lingering doubts. The house changed hands once more, its dark legacy woven into its very foundation. The new owners, unaware of the shadows that lurked in the attic, chose to leave it undisturbed, a silent sentinel of forgotten whispers and lost souls. Yet on quiet nights, a faint laughter could be heard drifting from the attic window, a ghostly echo of a past that refused to be laid to rest. Story 19: Unseen Figures. The old Polaroid held secrets within its faded hues, memories frozen in time. Among the smiling faces and flickering candles, a hidden presence lurked unnoticed. A man, shrouded in shadow, stood at the fringes of the captured moments, inching closer with each passing photo. Sarah Winters stumbled upon the box of forgotten memories while clearing out her mother's attic after the funeral. Labeled simply as memories, it contained a treasure trove of family gatherings from her childhood. What should have brought solace turned into a descent into darkness. In the first photo, he loomed faintly, a mysterious silhouette on the periphery of her 7th birthday celebration. By the second snapshot, he had slipped inside, unnoticed by all, and in the third, he crept closer, a spectral presence behind her unsuspecting uncle. Disturbed, Sarah reached out to her father, seeking answers to the enigma captured in the photographs. But his denial only deepened the mystery, for no one recalled the enigmatic figure haunting the images. Detective Marcus Reed, weathered and wise, examined the eerie progression of photos laid out before him. As rain tapped against the windows, he traced the phantom's subtle advance through the gatherings, a chilling revelation unfolding before his eyes. The figure's deliberate movements, unseen yet palpable, raised questions that defied easy answers. Despite Sarah's mother being the photographer, no one could identify the intruder lurking in the background, drawing ever closer to the unsuspecting children. A thorough investigation ensued, revealing a chilling connection to long-forgotten crimes. Through enhanced images and dental records, the shadowy figure was unmasked as Robert Keller, a maintenance worker linked to decades-old child abductions. Keller's sinister presence in the family photos mirrored his malevolent deeds, his hidden identity finally brought to light through painstaking detective work. The trail of disappeared children led back to him, buried secrets unearthed from beneath the concrete foundations of his past. As Sarah sat alone, grappling with the horrors exposed by the photographs, a sense of closure mingled with despair. The missing children's fates were finally revealed, their families granted a semblance of peace amidst the shattered illusions of safety. The unseen figure in the photos, once a ghostly specter haunting celebrations, now stood exposed in the harsh glare of justice. His twisted legacy of darkness laid bare, a reminder that sometimes the most insidious threats lurk within the shadows of captured moments, unseen but ever present. Story 20. The old hotel stood there, a relic of forgotten times, its paint peeling and its charm long faded. It was a place where transient souls sought respite for a single night, a place where stories whispered in the shadows. The weary clerk handed her the key, his eyes betraying a hidden knowledge. "Remember," he murmured, his voice laden with a mysterious warning, "avoid the last door on the left." Intrigue sparked within her, a flame of curiosity that beckoned her towards the forbidden. That night, amidst the hushed stillness of the hallway bathed in dim light, she found herself standing before that ominous door. The brass handle sent a shiver through her as her fingers grazed its icy surface. To the naked eye, it was just like any other door, blending seamlessly with its counterparts, yet, as she pressed her ear against it, a faint exhale brushed against her senses, a presence lurking on the other side. Detective Morgan Reed entered the scene, her weary gaze reflecting the weight of countless sleepless nights spent chasing shadows. The tape fluttered as she passed under it, leading her into a realm tainted by the stark scent of iron and decay. The room bore witness to a macabre dance of life and death, a pristine bathroom juxtaposed with the grim tableau of a life extinguished. A young woman lay sprawled on the floor, her golden locks splayed like a halo, eyes fixated on eternity with a silent scream frozen on her features. Reed knelt beside the victim, a silent sentinel amidst the chaos, mindful of the delicate dance of evidence laid out before her. The forensic technician's voice cut through the heavy air, matter of fact in the face of tragedy. "Third one this season," he intoned, each word a solemn beat in the dirge of loss. The pattern was clear, a signature etched in blood across the canvas of forgotten motels. As the investigation unfurled its tangled web, Reed delved deeper into the shadows that enveloped the victim's final moments. The threads of the narrative led her through a labyrinth of secrets and lies, each revelation peeling back another layer of the killer's facade. Elaine Werner's life, once a tapestry of order and routine, now a fractured mirror reflecting the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. The whispers of a clandestine affair led Reed down a path fraught with betrayal and deceit. A name, a mere letter, see, a specter haunting Werner's final days. The threads of fate intertwined as Reed uncovered the tangled web of Charles Emerson, a man of influence and duplicity. His mask of innocence slipped under Reed's relentless gaze, revealing the monster that dwelt within. The courtroom became a stage for justice, a reckoning for the lives snuffed out by a predator in sheep's clothing. Emerson's facade crumbled under the weight of irrefutable evidence, each piece a damning testament to his depravity. Behind the mask of a respectable man lurked a soul devoid of empathy, a darkness that consumed all in its path. The echoes of the door on the left case reverberated through the annals of true crime history, a cautionary tale of the monsters that walk among us in plain sight. Reed, haunted by the specter of unanswered questions, bore witness to the chilling truth that some doors once opened can never be closed again. And in the quiet confines of the evidence locker, 3 hotel keys lay dormant, relics of a past best left undisturbed, lest the darkness within be unleashed once more. Story 21. The tale began with the new owners, who brushed off the crackling of the old intercom system as a mere quirk, an artifact of the past, forgotten yet still present in the Victorian manor they now called home. Daniel and Meredith Parker found solace in the history that permeated the walls of their abode, despite the unsettling late-night disturbances. One fateful evening, curiosity got the best of the husband as he pressed the intercom button, unleashing a whisper that sent shivers down his spine. "Why did you come back?" The words echoed through the speaker, sending a chill through the dimly lit hallway. His wife, standing close behind him, denied ever speaking those words, adding to the mystery that enveloped them. The manor, with its ancient oak trees standing sentinel outside, harbored secrets buried beneath its weathered exterior. The Parkers had acquired the property at a bargain, thanks to the uneasy demeanor of the real estate agent during the tour. The vintage intercom system, a relic connecting every room, had captured the couple's hearts with its nostalgic charm. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the scene in her unmarked vehicle, sensing there was more to the reported break-in than met the eye. Daniel, visibly shaken, recounted the strange occurrences that had plagued their home. The static turned to whispers, then to full sentences, a haunting progression that both he and Meredith had experienced. In the living room, Meredith's hands trembled around a forgotten mug as she revealed the hidden journal they had unearthed while renovating. Behind a wall, wrapped in decaying plastic, lay the diary of Alina, the long-ago mistress of the house. Her elegant yet frantic script detailed suspicions of her husband's sinister plans, ending abruptly 30 years prior. The investigation led to the revelation of Vincent and Alina Blackwood, the previous owners whose tragic tale unfolded like a dark fairy tale. Vincent, now elderly and confined to a care facility, confessed to the murder of his wife under the guise of her disappearance. The skeletal remains found beneath the garden shed confirmed Alina's fate, bringing closure to a decades-old mystery. Vincent's chilling confession exposed the web of lies he had spun to maintain his innocence, a facade shattered by the relentless whispers of the intercom he had tried to silence. The trial swiftly concluded with a guilty plea, condemning him for his calculated crime and the elaborate deception that followed. Daniel and Meredith, unable to bear the weight of the house's grim past, bid farewell to the manor after a solemn memorial for Alina in the restored garden. The intercom, a conduit for the voices of the past, was removed by the subsequent owners during renovations, its whispers fading into the echoes of history. Detective Reeves, closing the Blackwood case file for the final time, pondered the enigmatic nature of the house that had found a way to speak its truth across time. As she drove past the property on her nightly route, she would slow down, the window cracked open just enough to catch any lingering whispers carried on the night breeze. The saga of the house that answered back remained etched in her mind, a reminder of the mysteries that dwell within the walls of forgotten homes. Story 22. In the old apartment, peculiar sounds echoed through its aging pipes and creaking floorboards. But the new tenant, Sarah, sensed a difference in the rhythm of the noises she heard. The footsteps above her were too steady, too purposeful for a building settling or small critters roaming about. Curiosity mingled with fear as she pondered the mysterious source of the deliberate steps that traversed the floor above hers every night. One evening, summoning her courage, Sarah tapped the ceiling with a broomstick. The footsteps ceased abruptly, plunging the space into an eerie silence. Then, a single knock reverberated back from within the ceiling itself, sending shivers down Sarah's spine. Sarah chose to keep the unsettling incident to herself, attributing it to her imagination or perhaps a harmless creature finding refuge in the attic. Despite her efforts to drown out the persistent footfalls by cranking up the volume on her television and wearing headphones to bed, the methodical pacing continued, a haunting presence in the darkness above. Detective Morris was drawn into the enigmatic tale when a maintenance worker stumbled upon a concealed crawlspace while conducting routine repairs. The worker had uncovered a secret passage behind a section of drywall outside Sarah's apartment, a passage that defied the building's official layout. Within this hidden space, remnants of a makeshift living quarters emerged: discarded food wrappers, empty water bottles, a soiled blanket, and a worn notebook. Alarmed, the building superintendent alerted the authorities, leading Detective Morris and his partner, Detective Rivera, to the scene. The The maintenance worker, visibly shaken, repeated his chilling discovery. Someone's been living in the walls, someone's been watching. The notebook found in the crawlspace contained meticulous observations of Sarah Coleman, her daily routine, her interactions, her habits. The entry started off orderly but devolved into chaos, marked by cryptic symbols and a sense of growing desperation. The final note ominously declared, "The subject no longer responds to my signals. She has chosen to ignore me. No one ignores me." Forensic teams uncovered a labyrinth of hidden passages woven into the building's structure, connecting multiple apartments but converging upon viewing points aimed solely at Sarah's dwelling. Interviews with current residents yielded no concerning reports, yet former tenants spoke of feeling a constant gaze upon them, of unexplained disturbances that drove them to silence out of fear of sounding delusional. The pivotal breakthrough arrived with the revelation of microscopic blood traces within one of the secret spaces, linking back to a missing individual named Martin Weaver, a former tenant living directly beneath Sarah. Martin's abrupt disappearance had coincided with confrontations he'd had with a reclusive tenant named Edward, who had since vanished without a trace. Delving deeper into Edward's history, investigators uncovered a pattern of transient living, always on the top floor, always evading close connections. A remote cabin owned by Edward unveiled a chilling array of evidence surveillance materials, detailed logs of his specimens, and a macabre collection of missing persons cases tied to his past residences. As the search for Edward intensified, a disturbing message left in Sarah's abandoned apartment hinted at a new hideout, setting off a frantic race against time. With Sarah missing, the manhunt for Edward, now identified as Edward Mercer, a skilled construction worker with a dark secret, continued across state lines. The revelation of hidden spaces and clandestine networks within apartment buildings sent shockwaves through law enforcement agencies, prompting warnings about unauthorized modifications and concealed dwellings. Detective Morris grappled with the haunting image of Sarah, unknowingly living beneath the gaze of a predator lurking within the very walls of her home. And as nightfall descended, casting shadows upon his own dwelling, Detective Morris found himself gazing upwards, enveloped in a silence that echoed with the footsteps of a mysterious presence. In those quiet moments, he pondered the chilling question: who else might be listening unseen from the hidden spaces within the walls? Story 23. The apartment had sat vacant for months, its silence undisturbed by human presence. When the new tenants crossed its threshold, their expectations were low, a layer of dust, perhaps some forgotten remnants of the past. But one door resisted their efforts to open it, stubbornly locked from within. The closet, a small space with secrets hidden behind its closed door, held a mystery that begged to be uncovered. With a sense of anticipation tinged with trepidation, the landlord finally managed to pry the door open, revealing a sight that sent a chill down the spines of those present. The walls of the closet were marred by deep scratches, jagged lines etched into the wood as if by frantic hands seeking escape. And in the dim corner, an ancient flip phone lay dormant, its battery long drained except for the faint glow of a single unread message on the screen. Detective Morgan Shaw, a seasoned investigator who had witnessed her fair share of grim scenes, felt a shiver run down her spine at the sight before her. It wasn't the presence of blood or overt violence that unsettled her, but rather the silent plea for help conveyed by those desperate scratch marks. "We need forensics here immediately," she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, who diligently documented the haunting evidence before them, and gather the records of the previous tenants. The message on the forgotten phone simply stated, "I know what you did." The The landlord, a man whose nerves seemed to be in a perpetual state of unease, revealed that the previous tenant had vanished without a trace, leaving behind unpaid rent. A young woman kept to herself. Quiet, he muttered, his gaze skirting away from the closet. No trouble caused. Forensic analysis unveiled a grim truth hidden within the scratches on the wall's multiple blood samples, predominantly matching a single individual. Emma Caldwell, a 28-year-old woman, reported missing after her abrupt disappearance. However, two distinct DNA profiles emerged from the evidence. One remained unidentified, a mysterious presence in the system. The other belonged to a man who, according to official records, had perished in a car accident 2 years prior. Derek Mercer. "This doesn't make sense," Shaw murmured, her gaze fixed on the perplexing findings. Derek Mercer, once presumed dead following a tragic incident, now left his genetic imprint on the confines of Emma's closet. The apartment bore witness to a life abruptly halted. Unopened mail, a forgotten coffee mug, a neatly made bed, all remnants of a life interrupted. Phone records unveiled a pattern in Emma's communication, regular calls with her sister until a sudden cessation, interspersed with numerous calls from an unidentified number leading up to her vanishing act. The sister mentioned a mysterious boyfriend, Officer Reed relayed. No name given, just described as intense and private. Surveillance footage captured a pivotal moment, a shadowed figure following Emma into her building, concealed beneath a baseball cap, his identity carefully shielded from prying eyes. The breakthrough emerged when partial fingerprints, traced to Derek Mercer, were discovered on the closet's inner doorknob. He faked his death, Shaw deduced, but why and what ties him to Emma? The unidentified DNA sample unraveled a connection to another missing persons case, Lynette Porter, who had disappeared years earlier. Witnesses recalled seeing a woman resembling Lynette visiting Emma's apartment, weaving a complex web of entwined fates. An investigative trail led to a secluded property owned by the Mercer family, where a gruesome discovery awaited them. Behind imposing basement doors, Lynette Porter was found alive yet emaciated, a mirror image of Emma's captivity. "He forced me to witness," Lynette whispered, her eyes vacant, "said I needed to understand the consequences of defiance." As evidence mounted journals chronicling Mercer's obsession with dominance, photographs of women resembling his victims, and chilling video footage of Emma's confinement. The manhunt intensified. Derek Mercer, a predator cloaked in deception, eluded authorities as he harbored dark secrets within his grasp. When Mercer was apprehended at a bus terminal, his calm facade belied a malevolent force lurking beneath the surface. "She sent that message herself," he claimed, dismissing Emma's final plea for help. "She craved attention, but she didn't merit salvation." The subsequent trial unveiled Mercer's elaborate charade to evade justice, his meticulous plan to erase his past and prey upon unsuspecting victims. Emma's fate remained a haunting enigma, her body never recovered from the confines of the closet where she had met her tragic end. A swift verdict sealed Mercer's fate, condemning him to a lifetime behind bars without reprieve. As he accepted his sentence with a cryptic smile, only he comprehended the twisted rationale that guided his actions. During the sentencing, Lynette Porter addressed the court with steely resolve. "He confined us to darkness, for that's where his soul resides, imprisoned in shadows. While he withers away in his cell, I will embrace the light." The case reshaped investigative protocols for missing persons, emphasizing the significance of relational patterns and thorough property inspections. Detective Shaw preserved the closet door from Emma's apartment, a somber reminder that the most harrowing crime scenes often bore no traces of blood, but rather the desperate marks of a soul fighting for survival. Story 24. The town held its secrets close, whispered only in the rustling leaves of the ancient woods. Among the shadows at the edge of the forest, a house stood forgotten, its windows staring blankly into the night, its porch weary from the weight of time. No one in the town claimed ownership of the house, nor could anyone recall who had erected its weathered walls. It existed on the periphery of their consciousness, a mystery best left undisturbed. One fateful day, a group of hikers strayed too close to the house's crumbling facade. As they drew near, their eyes caught sight of something peculiar etched upon the wooden siding, names, carved deeply as if to serve as an ominous warning. And at the very bottom of the list, fresh and untouched by the passage of time, was a name that sent shivers down their spines, a name unfamiliar to all but one among them. In a trembling voice, one of the hikers whispered, "That name, it's mine." When the call came in to the local dispatch, it was logged as a routine trespassing incident. Mason Wright, the hiker who had discovered his own name carved into the abandoned house, spoke with a voice laced with unease. The responding officers anticipated nothing more than the mischief of wayward youths, a mere prank played out in the shadows. But what they uncovered within those decaying walls defied all rational explanation. Detective Sarah Keller arrived at the scene as night draped its cloak over the forest. Her flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing the names of 27 souls etched vertically along the eastern wall of the house. Some names had faded into obscurity, blending with the aged wood, while others remained sharp and distinct as if freshly carved. And at the very bottom, standing out starkly against the backdrop of time, was the name of Mason Wright, the grooves still bearing the scent of fresh sawdust. "I've never set foot in this place before," Mason protested, his breath forming wisps of fog in the chilly air. "I can't comprehend how anyone would know my name." Thus began an investigation that delved into the depths of the unknown. Background checks on each name inscribed on the wall sent shivers down the spines of the detective team. Every name belonged to a person reported missing over the span of 4 decades, individuals who had ventured into the woods alone and never returned. Some cases had grown cold with time, while others remained open, each one tinged with a haunting similarity. They had all vanished while hiking solitary paths. Forensic analysts meticulously documented the carvings, noting the nuances in depth, technique, and weathering. The oldest name, that of Rebecca Hansen, harked back to a missing person case from 37 years past, a tale of a young woman who had ventured into the woods and vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a solitary hiking boot by a babbling stream. Detective Keller pressed Mason for answers, but his story remained unwavering. He professed no ties to the area beyond that particular hiking expedition with his college friends, chosen at random from an online recommendation. His background yielded no connection to the other names haunting the walls of the forsaken house. The focus of the investigation shifted to Mason's companions. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, provided snapshots captured during their hike, revealing an unsettling presence, a blurred figure lurking in the background of several photos, a tall, thin specter obscured by the foliage. "We never encountered anyone else on our trek," Emily insisted. "We would have remembered." With a sense of foreboding, Detective Keller ordered a search of the house's interior. Dust coated every surface, furniture lay in disarray, yet it was in the basement that a chilling revelation awaited. Personal effects belonging to the missing hikers were meticulously arranged on wooden shelves, a macabre display of watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, each item labeled with the name of its respective owner from the wall outside. As the evidence unfolded, a grim truth emerged. Bloodstains, faded but unmistakable, adorned the concrete floor, remnants of attempts to scrub away the sins of the past. Though no bodies lay buried beneath the house, cadaver dogs signaled fervently toward the thick undergrowth at the rear of the property, where the forest loomed in silent judgment. Detective Keller observed a shift in Mason's demeanor as the investigation progressed. He spoke of spectral whispers outside his dwelling, of enigmatic footprints leading to his door but never away, of shadowy figures haunting his every step. Despite the protective detail assigned to him, Mason's paranoia swelled like a gathering storm. A breakthrough came with the unearthing of long-buried land records in the county archives. The house, it was revealed, had once belonged to a reclusive figure, Victor Blackwood, a hunter who had vanished without a trace 15 years prior, his disappearance left unexamined by official scrutiny. Accounts from neighbors described a tall, gaunt man who shunned society, slipping through the shadows like a wraith. Armed with a warrant, Detective Keller led a search deeper into the encroaching forest. Among the dense foliage, the search party stumbled upon a network of primitive hunting blinds, strategically positioned along the well-trodden trails. Within one such blind, a journal lay concealed, its pages filled with meticulous observations of hikers' notes on their habits, their vulnerabilities, their very essence as prey. The entries grew increasingly sinister over time, transitioning from accounts of hunting wild game to chilling narratives of stalking human quarry. The final pages meticulously chronicled the selection and pursuit of each victim whose name adorned the wall of the abandoned house, a twisted catalog of Victor Blackwood's dark obsession. A manhunt of unprecedented scale was launched, spanning across jurisdictions in a desperate bid to capture the elusive hunter-turned-predator. Helicopters crisscrossed the sky, their thermal imaging scouring the forest floor, while ground teams combed every crevice and alcove. Yet Victor Blackwood remained a specter, eluding the grasp of justice. In the midst of the hunt, Mason Wright vanished without a trace. His apartment stood empty, a silent witness to his abrupt departure. Upon the bedroom wall, freshly carved into the wood, a chilling message lingered: the hunter becomes the hunted. Weeks turned into months as the search for Mason yielded no answers. Then, in a hidden chamber behind a false wall within Blackwood's house, forensic technicians unearthed a sinister workshop, the tools of a craftsman, jars of preservatives, and a freshly carved plaque bearing a name that struck fear into the hearts of all who beheld it. The lead forensic technician who had processed the house in the initial stages of the investigation. With a sense of urgency, authorities encircled the house with an impenetrable web of surveillance. Cameras stood sentinel, motion sensors poised to detect any intrusion. The stage was set for a final confrontation. In the dead of night, the sensors sprang to life, alerting the tactical teams to an intruder's presence. Security footage captured a figure emerging from the shadows, a towering, ethereal being moving with an otherworldly grace. As the teams closed in, the cameras faltered, losing sight of their quarry in the blink of an eye. When the feed resumed, the figure had vanished without a trace, leaving only a lingering sense of dread in its wake. To this day, the house remains under constant vigil, a monument to unsolved mysteries and vanished souls. Mason Wright and the forensic technician faded into the mists of legend, their fates intertwined with the enigma of the haunted house. The search continues, fueled by reports of similar disappearances in distant forests, each name on the wall a testament to a darkness that defies comprehension. Whispers of the house at the edge of the woods echo through the town, a tale of terror and tragedy that dares not be spoken aloud. And as night descends over the ancient trees, casting long shadows upon the forgotten dwelling, the names etched into its walls remain a chilling reminder of the secrets that lie hidden in the heart of the forest, the names that no one dares to speak. Story 25. Renovations always bring to light the unexpected, hidden treasures of the past waiting to be discovered. For Sarah and Michael, uncovering the secrets hidden beneath the floorboards of their Victorian-era home was an experience they would never forget. The couple, drawn to the charm of the old house, never anticipated the darkness that lay dormant within its walls. As they lifted the floorboards, a delicate letter revealed itself, carefully tucked away. The paper aged, the ink faded, but the warning it carried was as clear as day. Don't trust the one who knocked. Before they could absorb the weight of those words, 3 sharp knocks pierced the silence of the empty house, sending shivers down their spines. Detective Alina Reed, with her seasoned partner, delved into the mystery. The note, fragile and worn, held a story that begged to be unraveled. Sarah and Michael's unease was palpable, their innocence apparent in the eyes of the detective. But the house harbored a history far more intricate than they could have imagined. The house, once owned by the Hargrove family, bore witness to secrets long buried. Franklin and Margaret Hargrove, a couple with a seemingly ordinary life, held a darkness within their past. Franklin's descent into paranoia, fueled by unseen threats, led to a tragic series of events that remained hidden for years. Reed's investigation unearthed a tale of debts unpaid and a man named Victor Mercer, a shadow from the past with ties to illegal gambling. Franklin's refusal to bow to his demands set off a chain of events that culminated in a chilling discovery beneath the house, a skeleton, a victim of past sins, hidden from the world for decades. Margaret's diary, a haunting account of fear and guilt, shed light on the true extent of the tragedy that befell the Hargrove family. The knocks that echoed through the halls, a reminder of a past that refused to stay buried. As the case came to a close, justice was served, but the house stood as a silent witness to a tale of betrayal and loss. Sarah and Michael, unable to bear the weight of the secrets within its walls, chose to part ways with the house, leaving it to stand empty, a monument to a past best forgotten. Local whispers spoke of nights haunted by 3 distinct knocks, a ghostly reminder of the darkness that once lingered within. The letter, a relic of a bygone era, remained a chilling testament to the words it held: "Don't trust the one who knocked." In the end, Detective Reed pondered the mysteries that lingered, the unanswered questions that haunted the shadows. Some truths, she realized, are destined to remain hidden, veiled in the mists of time, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to seek them out. Story 26. Once upon a time, there came a package with no return label or tracking number to Sarah Miller's doorstep. It was just a simple cardboard box, slightly damp from the morning dew. The package wasn't meant for her, for the name on it was Daniel Whitaker, a stranger to her world. She could have easily left it untouched, ignored its existence like a passing breeze. But curiosity, that insatiable hunger for the unknown, whispered to her, coaxing her to unravel the mystery within. With cautious fingers, she peeled back the tape sealing the box, half expecting mundane contents like books or clothes. Yet what greeted her was a relic of the past, an old VHS tape, accompanied by a single sticky note bearing the cryptic message, "Watch alone." Sarah found herself holding the black plastic tape, its weight feeling heavier than mere plastic, as if carrying the burden of forbidden secrets. Her fingertips traced the worn edges, feeling the grooves and imperfections etched into the casing. The handwritten note exuded urgency. each stroke on the paper seemingly pressed with a sense of impending revelation. Meanwhile, the suburban neighborhood outside her window carried on with its usual rhythm, the distant bark of a dog, the laughter of children playing, and the steady drone of a lawnmower cutting through the morning air. Life continued as if unaware of the enigma that had just crossed Sarah's threshold. Bringing the package inside, she placed it on her kitchen counter, uncertainty clouding her thoughts. The name Daniel Whitaker held no significance in her memory. Having resided in the house for years, she had never received any mail addressed to him. The former occupants, the Johnsons, had left no trace of a connection to this mysterious stranger. Curiosity tugged at her, mingling with a creeping unease as she glanced at the dusty VCR, a relic of bygone days. There was something about the tape that beckoned to her, a puzzle veiled in the darkness of its worn casing. Against her better judgment, Sarah inserted the tape into the VCR. Static crackled on the screen initially, gradually sharpening into focus to reveal a dimly lit room illuminated by a single lamp. The low, askew camera angle painted a scene of urgency, of secrets waiting to be unveiled. A man sat in a wooden chair, his features shrouded in shadows at first. "My name is Daniel Whitaker," his voice resonated through the speakers, quiet yet unwavering. "If you're watching this, someone has found you, and they will find me too." As the man leaned forward, the dim light revealed a visage marked by exhaustion and vigilance, tired eyes, unkempt stubble, and disheveled hair. "I did not commit the crime," he continued, his voice tinged with desperation. "I need you to understand that. They planted the evidence against me, my fingerprints, my DNA, despite never coming into contact with her." The camera trembled slightly as Daniel adjusted its angle, offering glimpses of the barren room around him, bare walls, sparse furniture, a temporary refuge for someone perpetually on the edge of flight. "They fabricated it all," his voice quivered with emotion. "The police report will paint me as her acquaintance, our relationship tainted by conflict and violence, but it's all a lie. I had never met Catherine Walsh until her face appeared on the news, lifeless in her own home. And yet my DNA was inexplicably intertwined with the crime scene, a damning web of deception." Detective Eliza Ramirez scrutinized the identical VHS tape on her desk, the fifth one to surface, each bearing the same haunting message from the elusive Daniel Whitaker, an individual accused of the heinous murder of Catherine Walsh. A man who had vanished into thin air on the day the victim's body was discovered. Initially, the Walsh case seemed straightforward, a young professional woman strangled in her own bedroom, the absence of forced entry, signs of a struggle, and DNA evidence pointing unequivocally to Whitaker, whose fingerprints were already cataloged in the system from a previous minor infraction. Eyewitnesses claimed to have spotted a man resembling him near the victim's residence in the weeks leading up to the tragedy. Cell phone records seemingly placed him in the vicinity on that fateful night, a case seemingly closed until the arrival of the enigmatic tapes. "The tapes complicate matters," Detective Ramirez recorded her thoughts as she updated the case files. "Whitaker is either orchestrating an elaborate charade or revealing a darker truth hidden beneath the surface." Surveying the evidence board, she studied photos of Catherine Walsh in happier times, crime scene snapshots too grim to linger on, maps pinpointing the delivery locations of the mysterious packages, and at the heart of it all, the driver's license photo of the elusive Daniel Whitaker, his gaze seeming to implore for justice. The course of the investigation took an unforeseen twist when Ramirez unearthed Catherine Walsh's involvement in blowing the whistle on her employer, Pharmacorp, a pharmaceutical giant entangled in murky dealings with governmental entities. Walsh had stumbled upon discrepancies in their clinical trials, unearthing evidence of concealed side effects in a hastily pushed drug. She was set to testify against them. A former colleague divulged in a hushed tone, casting wary glances around. Catherine possessed incriminating documents, proof that the top brass were privy to the dangers but chose to bury them. The trial was mere days away. Detective Ramirez noticed peculiar anomalies surfacing in the case, the DNA evidence appearing almost too precise, situated in locations incongruent with the crime scenario, witness statements sounding rehearsed with unnervingly similar phrasing, and security footage from nearby establishments mysteriously glitching during the crucial time frame surrounding the murder. 3 days after the initial tape, Sarah Miller found herself in possession of a second package, this one containing a trove of damning evidence, clinical trial reports, internal correspondences, email transcripts, all bearing Catherine Walsh's digital imprint. Each document corroborated her findings, validating her crusade for truth. The focus of the investigation shifted as Ramirez collaborated with other recipients of the mysterious tapes, piecing together Whitaker's clandestine breadcrumb trail. He had been employed in IT security for a subcontractor servicing PharmaCorp's network, never crossing paths with Catherine but stumbling upon her name flagged within an anomalous security protocol he wasn't authorized to access. They had her under surveillance, Whitaker revealed in a subsequent tape that surfaced. I intercepted the directives in the system. They were aware of her accumulating evidence, and then I found myself locked out of the network. The next day she was gone, and I found myself branded as her killer. The pivotal moment arrived when Sarah Miller discerned a crucial detail on her copy of the tape that had eluded others, a telltale reflection in a window behind Whitaker, revealing a row of storage units. Collaborating with Detective Ramirez, they identified the precise location. Inside Unit 217 lay the smoking gun, Whitaker's journal chronicling the conspiracy, Catherine's original incriminating files, and most damningly, meticulous plans for framing Whitaker, drafted in the handwriting of PharmaCorp's head of security, an ex-law enforcement officer with access to evidence tampering procedures. Justice didn't descend in a blaze of glory, but manifested through the accumulation of irrefutable evidence that shattered the facade of deception. 3 PharmaCorp executives faced indictments, the head of security opting to cooperate in exchange for testimony against his superiors. The tainted drug was withdrawn from consideration for market release. Daniel Whitaker emerged from his clandestine exile, a specter of his former self. The charges against him dropped, yet the scars of his ordeal etched deep into his soul. In a brief encounter with Sarah Miller, he stood on her porch, where the first package had found its way to her doorstep. "Why me?" she queried, her gaze searching his worn features. "Why send it to my address?" His weary eyes met hers, conveying a tale of calculated chance. "The algorithm selected you. I needed individuals devoid of any ties to me or Catherine, individuals off their radar, individuals who still held faith in their discernment amidst the damning verdict of guilt." The erstwhile suspect and the inadvertent witness stood in silence, contemplating the fragile boundary between justice and manufactured falsehoods. Finally, Sarah broke the hush. The incorrect address turned out to be precisely the right one. The VHS tapes found their way into evidence, tangible reminders that truth often arrives in enigmatic parcels, bearing unfamiliar names, awaiting the inquisitive gaze willing to delve into the unknown. Story 27. The gentle current whispered its secrets that quiet morning, the water a mirror reflecting the stillness of the world. The fisherman's boat glided effortlessly, almost lulled to sleep by the tranquil rhythm of the river. It was then, in that hushed symphony of nature, that a peculiar sight caught his eye: a solitary suitcase bobbing near the shore, a lone wanderer adrift in the glassy expanse. At first glance, the fisherman dismissed it as a mere castaway from careless hands, perhaps filled with forgotten garments destined for a watery grave. But as he drew closer, a pungent odor wafted towards him, thick and suffocating, a riddle that lingered in the air. The suitcase, encased in chains, bore witness to time's relentless embrace, its edges tainted with the rust of neglect. Authorities descended upon the scene like silent guardians of the river, their movements deliberate, their expressions veiled in solemnity. With a resounding click, the chains yielded to their persistence, unveiling a macabre truth within. Not garments, but strands of hair cascaded out, entwined with fingers frozen in a silent plea. And at the heart of it all, a cryptic message awaited: this isn't the first. Detective Sarah Mercer arrived, a figure cloaked in shadows, her presence a whisper in the wind. The victim lay before her, a haunting portrait of beauty marred by the river's embrace, mid-30s, dark locks now matted with the secrets of the water, skin once fair now marked by the passage of time. The medical examiner danced a delicate minuet of examination, each movement a tribute to the life now lost, before the body was gently cradled away. It wasn't the method of disposal that gripped Mercer's attention, but the meticulous care bestowed upon the victims form a silent elegy to a life extinguished. Nails immaculate, hair caressed by unseen hands, clad in garments of opulence. She was prepared, displayed, Mercer whispered, her voice a mere echo in the expanse of the river's embrace. The victim was unveiled as Catherine Walsh, a real estate luminary in a world of opulence, her name synonymous with the echoes of high-end properties. Divorced, no heirs to carry her legacy, she dwelled in solitude within the confines of an upscale enclave. Colleagues painted a portrait of ambition intertwined with secrecy, a tapestry woven with precision. The tendrils of investigation slithered through Walsh's abode, a modernist sanctuary where perfection danced with obsession. Every corner exhaled an air of meticulous curation: furniture arranged with mathematical precision, surfaces devoid of the touch of dust. But within this pristine realm, a whisper of disarray beckoned an ajar drawer in her sanctuary, a gateway to revelations. Nestled within the confines of that drawer lay a leather-bound journal, its pages a tapestry of secrets etched in ink. The final entry, a harbinger of shadows, spoke of unseen eyes: he's watching again. Same car, different plates. Mercer's gaze lingered upon the words, a puzzle waiting to be unraveled. In the digital labyrinth of Walsh's existence, a curious trail emerged, an enigma of unknown correspondences, each bearing the weight of a singular phrase: I see your perfection. A symphony of unsettling synchronicity, each message a thread in the tapestry of her unraveling world. Browser histories whispered of unspoken fears, home security systems, protection devices sought in the dead of night. Mercer's mind danced with shadows as she pieced together fragments of a fractured reality, a killer's meticulous dance unfolding in the shadows. This wasn't rage, this was ritual, she murmured to her silent confidant, the river bearing witness to her musings. A shard of light fractured the darkness, a revelation born of unexpected origins. A humble pawnshop owner, a guardian of forgotten treasures, breathed life into the shadows with a single recognition: a necklace of emerald hues, a missing piece of Walsh's existence. The man who had bartered it away, a specter of mundanity: Michael Linden, a figure lost in the tapestry of the unremarkable. Surveillance whispered of Lyndon's clandestine dance entering Walsh's domain under the cloak of shadows, a silent specter in the realm of the living. His footsteps painted a portrait of obsession, a canvas daubed with shadows of intent, and within the confines of his modest abode, a symphony of horrors awaited a gallery of stolen moments, a shrine to the fallen. Behind the veil of normalcy, Lyndon's walls bore witness to a haunting exhibition photographs of Walsh and others, each a reflection of perfection marred by unseen hands. Some were marked with scarlet strokes, a testament to perceived imperfections. Walsh stood as the third muse in his gallery of shadows. A hidden chamber unveiled secrets, long buried a trove of relics belonging to the fallen, a testament to Lyndon's meticulous obsession. Strands of hair, stains of lipstick, fragments of lives immortalized in a shrine of darkness. Each item a tribute to his victims, a chorus of whispers in the night. The interrogation room bore witness to a silent dance of shadows as Lyndon stood before his accusers, his visage a mask of tranquility. In the face of damning evidence, his voice pierced the silence, devoid of emotion. They were imperfect, he intoned, a whisper in the void, their perfection a lie. The hunt for the echoes of the past led investigators to remote realms where two more suitcases surfaced, each a sepulcher of the fallen. Women akin to Walsh, real estate sirens of perfection, now immortalized in the river's embrace. Lyndon's trial unfolded as a tapestry of horror, his acts unveiled in the harsh light of justice. Families mourned in silence as the gavel's decree echoed through the chamber, a life sentence, a penance without reprieve. For Detective Mercer, the case closed with a heavy sigh, yet questions lingered in the shadows. What drove Lyndon to these dark depths? What specter of imperfection haunted his dreams? The river meandered on, a silent witness to the passage of time, its waters cleansing the echoes of the past. But within the precinct, upon Mercer's desk, lay remnants of a chilling saga, the notebooks of the fallen, a testament to the darkness that prowls behind closed doors. In the dance of shadows, in the realm of the ordinary, lies the truth sometimes. The most dangerous predators are those who dwell in plain sight, waiting for the mask of perfection to slip.